Chapter 483. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Bailey Ningsu appeared in tranquil sky and landed on the peak of the mountain. Her face was pale, and she anxiously ran through the small courtyard, rushing into the wooden house as fast as lightning. When she entered the wooden house and saw the situation inside, her face turned even uglier. Her heart ached so much that it was about to bleed. She saw Yunyao lying unconscious on the ground. Her face was pale and her body was lifeless. The corner of her mouth, her white dress, and the floor made of requiem wood were all stained with dark red blood. Yao Yao! Bailey Ningsu cried out in pain as tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. She rushed to Yunyao's side and hugged the unconscious Yunyao in her arms. She circulated her energy to check on Yunyao's injuries. After a few breaths, Bailey Ningsu found that Yunyao's body was on the verge of death and her soul was extremely weak. Most importantly, the Nirvana divine crystal in Yunyao's body had disappeared. Bailey Ningsu turned to look at Ji Tianqing on the icy jade bed. She saw that his body was glowing red and was gradually recovering his vitality. She understood everything. Yao Yao! My daughter, why are you so stupid? Idiot! Idiot! Bailey Ningsu looked up at the sky and cried out in grief. Her body went limp as she fell to the ground. She hugged Yunyao tightly in her arms as tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. However, she was still the divine doctor's daughter and the mistress of the Yun family. She had experienced many storms and hardships in her life. Even though her heart was filled with grief, she quickly calmed down. She carried the unconscious Yunyao out of the wooden house and left tranquil sky. Bailey Ningsu returned to the thousand-cloud palace as fast as she could. She anxiously opened the secret chamber and entered the dark starry sky. She placed Yunyao in the center of the array and waved her hand to release rays of spiritual light, quickly activating the array. The huge array released an earth-shattering green spiritual light that flowed into Yunyao's body continuously, instilling her with boundless vitality. Then, Bailey Ningsu quickly took out all kinds of elixirs and used her true essence to transform them into spiritual light before injecting them into Yunyao's body. 6 hours later, after stabilizing Yunyao's injuries, she took out a fiery red crystal from her interspatial ring. Without a doubt, this crystal that contained a mysterious power was another Nirvana divine crystal. Bailey Ningsu naturally wouldn't keep such an important sacred item in her room. All these years, she had been carrying it in her interspatial ring. Bailey Ningsu stood above the formation and looked at the Nirvana God crystal with a solemn expression. She used a secret technique and shot out a few rays of 5-colored light, controlling the God crystal to slowly descend and fly towards Yunyao's forehead. After a full 100 breaths of time, the Nirvana divine crystal finally entered Yunyao's forehead and entered the depths of her mind. After doing all this, Bailey Ningsu finally heaved a sigh of relief. She landed beside Yunyao and looked at Yunyao with a bitter smile. She murmured in a heavy and sorrowful tone, Yao Yao, Yao Yao. Mother should have known that with your personality, you won't change your mind easily once you've made a decision. Once you've decided on someone, you won't change your mind. I don't know what kind of virtue or ability that young man has, to actually make you disregard your own life and sacrifice your own to save him. If you want to use this method to force mother to take out another Nirvana divine crystal, you've already achieved your goal. Bailey Ningsu's tone was the same as her mood. It was full of sorrow, heaviness, and a strong sense of helplessness. Then, she sat down cross-legged beside Yunyao. She formed a hand seal and used her medicine Dao secret technique to help Yunyao quickly absorb the Nirvana divine crystal and recover from her injuries. The starry sky was always dark and cold. The surrounding scenery seemed to never change. Even though time passed quickly, no one noticed it. Unknowingly, 2 days passed. Bailey Ningsu continued to help Yunyao heal her injuries. In these 2 days, she had consumed more than half of her strength. She looked a little tired. Fortunately, Yunyao's injuries had stabilized. After her soul absorbed the Nirvana divine crystal, it finally returned to normal. Although her body was still very weak and her soul injuries would only recover after a few days of recuperation. But her consciousness gradually woke up and she slowly opened her eyes. When she woke up and saw the sky full of stars and a dark starry sky, she immediately understood her situation. She turned her head with difficulty and saw her mother, Bailey Ningsu, looking at her with a complicated expression. "Mother," Yunyao called out in a hoarse and weak voice. Bailey Ningsu nodded and said with a calm expression, "Yao Yao, it's good that you're awake. Mother didn't expect that you would do such a ridiculous thing to save that young man without caring about your own life. Mother wasn't wrong. You've been bewitched and have lost your rationality." Bailey Ningsu clearly had a lingering fear and was shocked by Yunyao's change. Seeing Yunyao looking at her in silence, she said with an indifferent tone, "Yao Yao, Mother will lock you up here to prevent you from doing something even more ridiculous. Mother will only let you out when you change your mind. In the meantime, you should focus on recuperating and quietly reflecting on your mistakes. From now on, Mother will never allow you to see Ji Tianqing again. The two of you are destined to never have a happy ending. Just forget about him." After saying that, Bailey Ningsu cast a spell and left the array. In the dark starry sky, Yunyao was left alone, quietly lying in the array. When Bailey Ningsu said those words in a dignified tone, her eyes dimmed and a trace of regret gushed out from her heart. But she didn't say anything and silently endured everything. After a long time, she closed her eyes and whispered in a low voice, "Tianqing, perhaps we won't be able to meet again in the future. Although it's a pity, I don't regret it. Even if I had to do it all over again, I would still do it. As long as you can wake up and live well, I'll be satisfied." Even though her voice was soft, her tone was filled with determination and persistence. In tranquil sky, in the small wooden house on the mountain peak, Ji Tianqing was still lying on the ice jade bed, motionless and silent. As time passed, the Nirvana divine crystal in the depths of his mind constantly released a mysterious power to heal his injuries. His injuries were quickly recovering, and the scarlet brilliance lingering around his body became more and more intense and dazzling. Soon, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. His injuries were completely healed, and his soul finally returned to its place. It was only now that the dazzling red light lingering around his body gradually converged back into his body. In the evening, the red light completely faded away, and everything returned to normal. He gradually woke up and slowly opened his eyes. Eldest senior sister, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but blurt out these 3 words the moment he woke up. He sat up from the ice jade bed and looked around. He saw that the wooden house was empty, and Yunyao wasn't in the house. There was only a smear of dark red blood left on the dark brown floor. Chapter 484. Ji Tianqing had been unconscious all this time. However, he knew that Yunyao had taken out her Nirvana divine crystal and put it into his body. He could hear Yunyao's voice and knew what she was doing, but he couldn't speak or stop her. Even though he didn't know how badly Yunyao was injured, nor did he know how she was doing right now. However, he heard Bailey Ningsu's sorrowful cry and saw the bloodstains on the ground. His heart was filled with worry and anxiety. He just wanted to fly to Yunyao's side immediately and see how she was doing. At this moment, a graceful and elegant figure silently appeared at the door of the wooden house. Ji Tianqing sensed her arrival and raised his head to look at her. When he saw the woman in a long brocade dress, he couldn't help but tremble and frown. In a trance, he thought he saw Yunyao. After all, that woman looked too similar to Yunyao. However, Ji Tianqing knew Yunyao very well and could immediately tell that the woman wasn't Yunyao. Her eyes and temperament were completely different from Yunyao's. Moreover, her eyes and aura were somewhat cold, as if she didn't come with good intentions. Ji Tianqing immediately guessed her identity. She was Yunyao's mother. He was silent for a moment before he stood up and bowed to Bailey Ningsu. However, he didn't say anything. He didn't know how to address Bailey Ningsu, nor did he know what else to say in this situation. Bailey Ningsu stood at the door and looked at him indifferently. She took the initiative to speak in a calm tone. It's good that you're awake. Yao Yao didn't risk her life to save you in vain. However, since you're awake, it's time to leave. Bailey Ningsu ordered him to leave. Her tone was cold and indifferent. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "There's no need for Madame Yun to remind me. I will leave as soon as possible and won't disturb you any longer. However, before I leave, I want to see Yun Yao." The one he was most worried about was Yun Yao. If he couldn't see Yun Yao's injuries, he would feel uneasy. However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Bailey Ningsu. "No need. Yao Yao is in seclusion to heal her injuries and won't see you. Moreover, you're not related to my Cloud Spirit Palace, and you almost caused Yao Yao to lose her life. I'm already being very kind by not taking my anger out on you. From now on, you and Yun Yao will never see Yao Yao, and I won't allow her to see you again. If you know your place, then please behave yourself and don't bother her." Hearing Bailey Ningsu's words, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. "Know my own place? Bother her?" He looked at Bailey Ningsu and said firmly, "Madame Yun, Yun Yao and I love each other and are willing to give up everything for each other. You've been through this before, so you should understand what it means to be connected, to share honor and disgrace, to live and die together. Moreover, you should know Yun Yao's nature better than I do. You should know that once she makes a choice, she won't change it. The same goes for me. Even if you try to stop me, you won't be able to change my feelings for Yun Yao." Bailey Ningsu raised her eyebrows and looked at Ji Tianqing coldly. She shook her head. "Ji Tianqing, it seems like you don't know your place. Moreover, you don't know enough about Cloud Spirit Palace. You don't know anything about the majesty and power of the imperial court. With your status, talent, and strength, you're not worthy of Yun Yao. You can't protect her, and you don't have the qualifications to be Cloud Spirit Palace's son-in-law. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you don't have any outstanding qualities that are worthy of my respect." Although Bailey Ningsu's words were sharp and direct, Yun Yunyun didn't back down. However, Ji Tianqing did not back down. His eyes were filled with determination and confidence as he said in a sonorous tone, "Madame Yun, everyone will grow and become stronger. I'm only 17 years old today. I don't have the qualifications to be Yun Yao's son-in-law. However, what about 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years from now? Can you see the future? Can you see my strength and situation at that time? I'm confident that I can become a powerhouse in a short year. It'll prove my talent and potential. Even if it's your favorite son of heaven, Long Yun Shao, I can defeat him with my own hands." Bailey Ningsu couldn't help but frown when she saw how confident he was. A playful smile appeared on her face. She said indifferently, "You're indeed young and frivolous. Overconfidence has turned into arrogance." Ji Tianqing didn't back down. He said with equal harshness, "Since Madame Yun doesn't believe me, why don't you wait for a year and see the result? As long as Yun Yao has me in her heart, I will never give up. No matter if it's a bottomless abyss or a mountain of swords or a sea of flames, I will never turn back even if my body is crushed." Bailey Ningsu stared at him. She raised her eyebrows and a strange light flashed in her eyes. She nodded slightly and said earnestly, "I have to admit that you've made me look at you with a whole new level of respect. Since you're so confident, I'll give you a glimmer of hope and show you a clear path. The Monarch Mansion is the best academy in the Central State. It's also the strongest martial arts holy land in the profound Sky Continent. If you're really a hidden dragon, then you can enter the Monarch Mansion with your talent and strength. As long as you can become a disciple of the Monarch Mansion, you'll be famous in the profound Sky Continent and have the chance to become a transcendent. If you can successfully enter the Monarch Mansion, I won't stop you from being with Yun Yao." Ji Tianqing had never heard of the monarch mansion and didn't know how strong this martial arts holy land was. But after he heard Bailey Ningsu's words, he said without hesitation, "Thank you for your guidance, Madam Yun. Since that's the case, then it's settled. I will definitely enter the monarch mansion and prove my talent and strength. Please wait and see." Bailey Ningsu looked at him deeply and nodded. "Ji Tianqing, remember your words today." After she finished speaking, she turned and left the wooden house. Her figure quickly disappeared into the transportation array. Ji Tianqing looked at her departing figure. He silently clenched his fists and walked out of the wooden house. Not long after, he left the tranquil sky and walked out of the Nebula Palace. Under the lead of the guards, he passed through the heavily guarded and majestic palaces and arrived at the main gate of the Cloud Spirit Palace. At this moment, the sun was setting in the west, shining a golden light on the square outside the main gate. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the resplendent square and looked back at the magnificent Cloud Spirit Palace. He muttered in his heart, "Cloud Spirit Palace, I'll be back." Then, he condensed a pair of golden wings with his Kenshin battle robe. Like a golden rock, he spread his wings and flew high into the sky. Not long after, his figure disappeared into the white sea of clouds. 25 chapters completed, please reward me. Chapter 485. The Sky Pillar sect had just gone through a great calamity and was in the midst of rebuilding. Ji Tianqing was worried about the Sky Pillar sect, so he naturally had to go back. After leaving the Cloud Spirit Palace, he rode Qian Yu and sped through the sky, flying all the way to the south. Along the way, Qian Yu flew over thousands of mountains and rivers, crossing countless majestic cities. Ji Tianqing was high up in the sky, overlooking the mountains, rivers, and cities below. Only then did he see the bustling scene of the Central Plains. The Central Plains had beautiful mountains and rivers, abundant spirit qi, and abundant resources. One ancient city after another, each with a history of hundreds to thousands of years, lay quietly between heaven and earth, exuding an ancient and vigorous aura. In the huge cities, rows upon rows of palaces and buildings could be clearly seen, as well as bustling crowds and martial artists of all shapes and sizes. Many martial practitioners with imposing appearances were riding strange spirit beasts or birds, shuttling back and forth between the cities. Even if those people flew across the sky on spirit beasts and brushed past Ji Tianqing, they would not take a second look at him. In the 9 regions of the southern continent, those at the Yuan Dan realm could be called experts. However, in the Central Plains, those at the Yuan Dan realm could only be called experts. Only those at the Heavenly Origin realm could be called martial arts experts. After all, the Central Plains was the sacred land of martial arts in the Tianxian continent. This place had the most abundant spirit qi and resources, as well as the most elite martial arts and secret technique inheritances. There were as many experts as there were clouds in the Central Plains. True geniuses came forth in large numbers, and heroes competed for supremacy. Qian Yu flew for nearly 20 days before leaving the Central Plains. In these 20 days, Ji Tianqing crossed hundreds of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and thousands of cities. He had a preliminary understanding of the Central Plains and increased his experience and knowledge. He deeply felt the vastness and prosperity of the Central Plains, and saw a wider world. He secretly made up his mind to enter the Central Plains as soon as possible and establish a foothold here. Only in the Central Plains could he broaden his horizons and pursue a higher level of martial arts. The Central Plains, the sacred land where geniuses gathered, was a more splendid stage. Qian Yu flew for another 10 days and finally carried Ji Tianqing back to the Star Ancient Realm in the Tianqian region. 2.5 months had passed since that shocking battle. The haze and influence of the war had gradually dissipated, and the situation in the Star Ancient Realm had stabilized. Of the original 8 great sects, only 4 were left. The Tianjian sect, the Thousand Autumns sect, the True Martial sect, and the Wind Fire sect had all fallen apart. The power structure of the ancient star realm had been reshuffled, and the other four sects had seized the opportunity to occupy a large number of spirit veins and treasured lands. Not long after, Ji Tianqing returned to the Sky Pillar sect. He rode Qian Yu and flew above the Sky Pillar sect, looking down at everything within 100 miles. They saw that the Sky Pillar sect, which was originally in ruins, had taken on a new look. More than half of Heaven Raising Peak, Great Peace Peak, Jade Sword Peak, and Twin Moon Peak had been destroyed in that great battle. Now, the elders and disciples of the Sky Pillar sect worked together and spent 2 months to restore the four mountains to their original state. Row upon row of brand new palaces sat on the four mountains, reflecting dazzling golden light under the afternoon sun. When the Demon Emperor had broken the seal, the entire Scarlet Firmament Peak had collapsed and turned into ruins. After the Scarlet Firmament Peak disappeared, the Spirit Vein Formation was also completely destroyed, leaving behind a huge pit with a radius of 20 miles in the ruins. Now, the abyss-like pit had long been filled in. The elders and thousands of disciples of the Sky Pillar sect spent a lot of effort to move a 1,000-meter-tall mountain and turn it into a brand new Scarlet Firmament Peak. The 9 mountains were still intact and arranged according to their original positions. Although the 9 Dragon Spirit Vein Formation had not been repaired yet, the world's spirit energy was slowly recovering. The sky was blue and the sun was warm. The world's spirit energy was abundant, and the 9 mountains exuded a majestic aura. After the war, the Sky Pillar sect had mostly returned to its original state. It did not look much different from before the war. The disciples of the Sky Pillar sect had also recovered their vitality. They were either busy repairing the sect's buildings or cultivating. Everything had returned to normal. The Sky Pillar sect had already walked out of the haze of the Great Calamity. Ji Tianqing landed on the Scarlet Firmament Peak and landed on the square in front of the palace that had just been built. There were many disciples in the square. Under the leadership of several deacons, they were busy building the buildings around the square and planting some spirit trees and trees. When Ji Tianqing descended from the sky, everyone raised their heads to look at him. Their faces revealed pleasant surprise as they cheered. "Look! It's Senior Brother Tianqing. Senior Brother Tianqing is back. That's great. I knew that Senior Brother Tianqing's luck was great. Nothing will happen to him. Senior Brother Tianqing. Our great hero is back." Not only were the dozens of disciples cheering in joy, even the deacons had gathered around with faces full of excitement. In a moment, everyone rushed into the square and surrounded Ji Tianqing. The scene of the sect suffering a great calamity and Ji Tianqing facing off against the Demon Emperor was deeply imprinted in everyone's minds, making it unforgettable for the rest of their lives. The surviving disciples of the Sky Pillar sect all remembered his indomitable aura and his valiant and heroic figure. From that moment on, almost all the disciples regarded him as their idol, a goal to learn from and emulate for the rest of their lives. In the 2 months after the end of the great battle, everyone learned that Ji Tianqing was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Everyone felt pained and worried. They silently prayed for him, hoping that he could wake up and recover soon. Now that the disciples saw that Ji Tianqing was safe and sound, their faces were flushed with excitement. Everyone crowded around him, talking and greeting him. Their voices were all very excited. "Senior Brother Tianqing, the scene of you fighting against the Demon Emperor is really unforgettable for the rest of my life. It's not just unforgettable for the rest of your life. The battle between Senior Brother Tianqing and the Demon Emperor was simply earth-shattering and earth-shattering. Senior Brother Tianqing, you're simply too mighty. Just like a god descending to the mortal world." There were also 2 deacons who said excitedly, "Tianqing, not only are you a great contributor to our Sky Pillar sect, but you're also a great hero who saved the Heavenly Stellar Ancient Realm and the Heavenly Stellar region. Previously, the Grand Elder proposed to erect a statue for you in the sect to engrave your contributions and deeds for future generations to admire and worship. This matter has received the approval of all the elders and deacons. All the disciples of the sect have also expressed their support. Look, that's the statue that the sect erected for you. Ji Tianqing looked in the direction that the deacon was pointing and saw a huge statue that was 100 meters tall at the edge of the square. Yesterday's outburst was too tiring. Little he had only slept for 4 to 5 hours for several days. His body could not take it anymore. Today, I'll update 5 chapters at once. At night, I'll update 1 or 2 chapters. Thank you for your understanding and support. Chapter 486. It was obvious that the statue had been built not long ago. It looked brand new and was shrouded in the golden sunlight. It looked holy and majestic. It was a lifelike statue, and its figure and appearance were basically the same as Ji Tianqing's. It was a sculpture of him fighting against the Devil Emperor. He stood at the edge of the square, facing the cliff. His eyes were fixed on the sea of clouds in front of him. He looked resolute and determined. His left hand was pointing to the ground. His right hand was raised and his palm was pointing to the sky. He was releasing his most powerful killing move. Anyone who saw this magnificent statue would be able to feel the unparalleled domineering aura, as well as the bravery and heroism of risking one's life without regard for one's safety. Ji Tianqing stared at the statue and sized it up. A hint of a smile could not help but flash in his eyes as he muttered to himself, Senior Xiang is really something. He actually did this kind of false reputation thing. The 2 deacons smiled and said, Tianqing, this is not for the sake of fame. This is the honor you deserve. Back then, you stepped forward bravely at the critical moment and fought against the Devil Emperor fearlessly. How heroic and impassioned you were back then. We all think that a statue of you is not enough. The Grand Elder said that the Grand Elder should record that battle and your deeds in the history books. He wants your name to go down in history. Go down in history. Ji Tianqing did not know whether to laugh or cry. These words sounded a little awkward. After all, he was still alive and well. Then, Ji Tianqing exchanged some pleasantries with the others. Then, he walked through the square and entered the new towering sky hall. The new towering sky hall was basically the same as the old one. Ji Tianqing entered the hall and saw that there was only one person in the empty hall. It was Xiang Wuji. Xiang Wuji was sitting in front of a table, reading books and scrolls. Apparently, he was dealing with the affairs of the sect. There were dozens of reports, letters, and scrolls on the table, waiting for him to read and deal with. Ji Tianqing understood with a single glance that in these 2 months, Xiang Wuji had to preside over the overall situation of the sect and must be extremely busy. Old Master, I'm back. He smiled and greeted Xiang Wuji. Xiang Wuji was deep in thought as he held a memorial in his hands. When he heard the voice, his body trembled. He suddenly raised his head and saw Ji Tianqing standing in the middle of the hall, looking at him with a smile. He immediately stood up, his face full of excitement as he said with a joyful tone, Tianqing. Why did you come back? As he spoke, Xiang Wuji quickly walked in front of Ji Tianqing and sized him up with bright eyes. Ha ha ha, your injuries and strength have all recovered. That's great. I've said it before. You brat, you're blessed with good fortune. You'll definitely be able to turn danger into safety and overcome this crisis. With that, Xiang Wuji pulled Ji Tianqing to a seat and impatiently asked, Tianqing, quickly tell this old man, how did your injuries recover so quickly? Was it the transcendent from Cloud Soul Palace who saved you? Where's Yunyao? Did she come back with you? Other than Yunyao and Ji Ku, the happiest person to see Ji Tianqing fully recovered was Xiang Wuji. He was filled with joy and excitement as he asked a bunch of questions. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a complicated tone, Old Master, this is a long story. Let me tell you slowly. Then, he briefly recounted what had happened in Cloud Soul Palace. Xiang Wuji listened quietly. The smile on his face gradually disappeared and his mood became heavy. After a moment of silence, he could not help but let out a long sigh. Sigh, I didn't expect this to be so complicated. Cloud Soul Palace is a mysterious and powerful family. They have a high status and a strong foundation. It's normal that they don't want to save you. Yin Yao, on the other hand, looks cold but has a strong personality. I can't believe she would make such a sacrifice for you. Brat, you and Yin Yao are in love. That's a great blessing. You can't let her down in this life. Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He only nodded silently. Xiang Wuji understood that he was a good man who valued friendship and loyalty. He did not say anything else and talked about another matter. Tianqing, it's been more than 2 months since the end of the war. In these 2 months, thousands of disciples, elders, and deacons have completed the task of rebuilding the sect. Now, we just have to wait for your master to come out of seclusion. Then, we can work together to repair the spirit vein formation. After the sect reactivates the spirit vein formation, it will take at most a few years to recover. Yesterday, I ordered the elders to start recruiting a large number of servants and new disciples. Moreover, after the Heavenly Sword sect and the Thousand Autumns sect were annihilated, a large amount of spirit veins and precious lands were emptied out, and the various elders are constantly occupying them. Ji Tianqing was relieved after listening to Xiang Wuji talk about the Sky Pillar sect's recent situation and the following arrangements. He nodded and said, Master is still recuperating in seclusion. You have to worry about these trivial and complicated matters. I'm afraid you'll be busy for a long time. Xiang Wuji waved his hand and said with a solemn expression, although I'm busy dealing with the sect's affairs, it's nothing. I'm old but strong, so I can still handle it. However, I'm still worried about something. I feel a little uneasy. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked doubtfully, what is it? Is it related to the Demon Emperor? Xiang Wuji nodded and said, that's right. Although you seriously injured the Demon Emperor and forced it to flee, there's been no news of it. In the past 2 months, there has been no news from the Devil Emperor. He hasn't caused any trouble, but this old man reckons that he is in seclusion to recuperate. I can't help but worry that the Demon Emperor might make a comeback after it recovers. Our sect has experienced a great calamity and its vitality has been greatly damaged. If the Demon Emperor comes back, our sect won't be able to withstand it. Furthermore, not only will the Star Ancient Realm encounter a great calamity, but the Heavenly Stellar region and the Southern Continent's 9 regions might also be plunged into misery and suffering. Ji Tianqing nodded with a solemn expression and said, your worry is very reasonable. The Demon Emperor's strength at its peak was indeed terrifyingly powerful. Even if it only recovered 30% to 40% of its power, no one in the entire Southern Continent's 9 regions can resist it. In my opinion, only the Central Continent's Imperial Court can send powerhouses to resist or eliminate the Demon Emperor and prevent it from bringing disaster to the world. Imperial Court. Xiang Wuji hesitated for a moment before saying with a bitter smile, back then, before the great calamity arrived, the Imperial Court sent the Son of Heaven to preside over the overall situation. It's a pity that the Son of Heaven was also helpless about the Heavenly Stellar region situation and was even more powerless to stop the fiend race's conspiracy. Now that the great calamity is over, it's even more impossible for the Imperial Court to send powerhouses to help. I reckon that the Imperial Court will only send people to search for the Demon Emperor's whereabouts and launch a pursuit. But the Demon Emperor is hiding in the dark, and we're all in the open. It's really impossible to guard against it. Chapter 487. As long as the Demon King was not eliminated, the Sky-Bearing sect and the Tianqian region would not be at peace. This hidden danger had to be resolved as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing and Xiang Wuji both understood this point, but there was nothing they could do about it. They could not find the Demon King, nor did they have enough strength to eliminate the Demon King. At this point, the two of them fell silent, their hearts heavy. After a while, Xiang Wuji sighed and said helplessly, a transcendent expert like the Demon King is not someone the human forces of the 9 regions of the southern land can fight against. We can only pray that the Demon King does not come back for revenge, and that the Imperial Court can eliminate him as soon as possible, or, the experts of our race in the Monarch Mansion can eliminate him for the people. Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard the name Monarch Mansion. Old Master, you also know about the Monarch Mansion. Can you tell me more about it? Xiang Wuji looked at him with surprise and explained, the Monarch Mansion is the most mysterious school and martial arts holy land in the Tianxian continent. The top geniuses of all races aim to enter the Monarch Mansion. I have roamed the continent for 200 years, how can I not know about the Monarch Mansion? But you, kid, you have only stayed in the central state for a few days, how do you know about the Monarch Mansion? Ji Tianqing explained calmly, when I left the Cloud Soul Palace, I made an agreement with Yun Yao's mother, Madame Yun. When I enter the Monarch Mansion, I can prove my talent and strength, and have the right to be with Yun Yao. At that time, Madame Yun will not stop me and Yun Yao. Only then did Xiang Wuji come to a realization and said with a nod, so that's how it is. With the power and status of the Cloud Soul Palace, only the geniuses of the Monarch Mansion are qualified to be the son-in-law of the Cloud Soul Palace. Although Madame Yun looks down on people, it is understandable. Tianqing, you don't have to be so calculative with her. Also, I believe that with your talent, it won't be too difficult to enter the Monarch Mansion. Ji Tianqing nodded, since I have made an agreement with Madame Yun, I will not go back on my words. No matter how powerful the Monarch Mansion is or how difficult it is to enter, I will not give up. Xiang Wuji saw the determination on his face and the determination in his voice. He nodded and praised, good. You should have this kind of ambition and confidence, kid. Moreover, this old man also approves of you entering the monarch residence to study. That was the top martial arts holy land on the continent, a mysterious force that even the imperial courts of various races feared. For thousands of years, the imperial residents had nurtured countless transcendents. They were all extraordinary characters whose names shook the continent. Tianqing, if you can enter the royal palace, you will have a chance to reach the transcendent stage. Whether it's for your martial arts future or for Yun Yao, you have to work harder and strive to enter the monarch mansion as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing memorized Xiang Wuji's words and nodded, I understand, I will definitely enter the monarch mansion. Xiang Wuji thought for a while and said, Tianqing, our sect has a treasure called the Destined Star Map. Your master once used that treasure to deduce the heavens and predict the future. He predicted that you would be the nemesis of the Devil Emperor. If the imperial court cannot kill the Devil Emperor as soon as possible, the heavy responsibility of killing the Devil Emperor will fall on your shoulders. Although you are not strong enough now, you have the Kenshin bloodline. One day, you will become a transcendent and kill the Devil Emperor. If you stay in our sect, you will only be able to reach the heaven stage. You will not be able to surpass the celestial stage. Therefore, after a while, you will leave for the middle state and find a way to enter the monarch mansion. Only in the monarch mansion will you be able to grow faster and become a transcendent. You will be able to kill the Devil Emperor. Xiang Wuji's eyes were filled with anticipation and his tone was solemn. Clearly, he had high hopes for Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing of course understood this. He nodded and said in a serious tone, Don't worry, old man. I will not let you down. Only then did Xiang Wuji reveal a trace of a smile and said in an amiable tone, All right, you just came back from the central continent and must be tired from the long journey. Quickly go and rest. Ji Tianqing got up and bid farewell. He left the sky-raising palace. He had just returned to his residence and was about to rest when someone came to visit him. He got up and opened the door to see a cute girl standing outside. It was Ji Ku. Ji Ku was a little excited, and her eyebrows were full of joy. When she saw Ji Tianqing, she couldn't help but cry out in surprise, Big brother Tianqing. You're really back. I heard from the other disciples that you're back. I didn't dare to believe it and thought they were lying to me. I didn't think you would recover so quickly. This is great. You're finally fine. This is great. Perhaps because she was too excited, Ji Ke actually cried tears of joy. Her clear eyes were filled with tears. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing revealed a gentle smile and reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. Ku, don't cry. I'm fine now. NN. Ji Ke nodded. She wiped away the tears in her eyes and an excited smile appeared on her face. Then, Ji Tianqing led her into the house. The two of them sat down, and only then did they start chatting freely. Brother Tianqing, you don't know how worried I was when you were in a coma for the past few days. I was so scared that you wouldn't wake up and never see me again. Ji Ke looked at Ji Tianqing with fear in her eyes. Ji Tianqing smiled and comforted her with a few words. He also thanked her for taking care of him during those days. The two of them chatted for a while before someone came to visit. It was Yan Er. He had heard the news from the disciples and came to visit with excitement. Over the past 2 months, Yan had been thinking about Ji Tianqing. He had been worried and praying for him. After entering the house, when he saw that Ji Tianqing was safe and sound, his face was full of excitement. Ji Tianqing chatted with Yan for a while and comforted him. Only then did he calm down. Then, the three of them chatted in the room and talked about the recent events in the Star Ancient Realm. After that great calamity, the power of the Star Ancient Realm had been reduced by half and the structure had been reorganized. The Tianjian sect, Thousand Autumns sect, and the other 3 sects had fallen apart and were destroyed. After listening to Ji Ke and Yan Er's narration, Ji Tianqing found out that the surviving members of the 4 sects had internal strife and caused many jokes and absurd things. When talking about the destruction of the 4 sects, the 3 of them still had lingering hatred and cursed that the 4 sects deserved it. After the 3 of them finished talking about the various sects, the topic returned to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Ke and Yan Er were very pleased with the progress of the Sky Pillar sect's recovery and reconstruction in the past 2 months. The two of them pulled Ji Tianqing out of the room and wanted to take him to see the changes in the Sky Pillar sect. Of course, Ji Tianqing readily accepted the good advice and did not refuse. Chapter 488. When Ji Tianqing had returned to the Sky Pillar sect, he had overlooked the sect's situation from high up in the sky. At that time, he only saw the 9 mountain peaks reappearing and the sect returning to its original state. Now, he had walked around the various mountain peaks and found that the spirit qi in the sect was weak. It was still somewhat desolate and dilapidated. Some forests and herb gardens had been destroyed and were still bare. They could not be restored in a short period of time. Many palaces and buildings were damaged, but only the houses were repaired and the protective array of the palaces and buildings had not been set up. Even the inner and outer sect disciples only had temporary residences. They did not have a secret room for cultivation, nor did they have sufficient cultivation resources. In short, it would take a long time for the Sky Pillar sect to recover. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ke, and Yan Er chatted for a long time and finally talked about Yunyao. Yan Er looked at him with some doubt and asked with concern, "Senior brother Tianqing, why didn't senior sister come back with you? Will she never come back here again after she goes home?" Ji Ke was also very concerned about this issue and asked, "Brother Tianqing, senior sister brought you back to Zhongzhou to find a way to treat your injuries. Now that you have recovered and returned to the sect, senior sister did not come back. Could it be that there was some unforeseen event?" Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment before he explained to the two of them. After Ji Ke and Yan heard his words, their expressions and emotions became a little complicated. Yan Er pursed her lips tightly. Her eyes were filled with confusion and anger. She said in a deep voice, "That Cloud Spirit Palace is too unreasonable. It's really hateful. Senior brother Tianqing, you and senior sister are so in love. You are simply a golden couple, a match made in heaven. You can do anything for each other, even risking your lives to protect each other, just like my father and mother. Why does that hateful cloud spirit palace want to stop you two from being together? Ji Ku's mood became even more complicated. She lowered her head slightly, not daring to look at Ji Tianqing's eyes. She was silent, but she thought to herself, in the past, I always thought that I was the one who loved brother Tianqing the most and that I would definitely be with him. Who would have thought that eldest senior sister, who looked cold and arrogant, would have such a strong personality? Grand senior sister was deeply in love with big brother Tianqing. She was willing to sacrifice her life to save him. It's a pity that I'm too weak to help big brother Tianqing. However, I also love big brother Tianqing deeply. I'm willing to risk my life for him. Ji Tianqing saw that the atmosphere was a little tense, so he calmly comforted Ji Ku and Yen Er. The two of you don't have to be so angry, and you don't have to worry about me and eldest senior sister. How could a powerful force like Cloud Soul Palace easily accept a nobody like me? However, being unknown is only temporary. I will soon set foot in Central Continent and fulfill my promise. It won't be long before I'll make Cloud Soul Palace look at me in a different light and make them stop obstructing me and eldest senior sister. Hearing this, Ji Ku and Yen Er both looked at him in confusion. Senior brother Tianqing, are you going to Central State? Big brother Tianqing, why are you going to Central State? Ji Tianqing said solemnly, in a few days, I'll go to Central State and find a way to enter the imperial residence. Only by entering the imperial residence can I be recognized by Cloud Soul Palace and be worthy of eldest senior sister. The imperial residence is the most mysterious and powerful holy land of martial arts in Central State. Only the top geniuses of various clans. After listening to his explanation, Ji Ku and Yen Er understood the whole story. Ji Ku said without hesitation, Big brother Tianqing, I want to go to Central State with you. No matter where you go, I'll go with you. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and was about to dissuade him. At this time, Yen Er also hurriedly said, Senior brother Tianqing, you can't leave me alone. I want to go to Central State with you. Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out and touched Yen Er's head and asked, Yen Er, I'm going to Central State to fulfill my promise and clear my name. Why are you going to Central State with me? Do you also want to enter the imperial residence? Yen Er looked up at him with innocent eyes and asked doubtfully, can't I? Central State is so prosperous, and the imperial residence is a holy land of martial arts. Of course I want to go and experience it and pursue a more profound martial arts realm. Ji Tianqing was startled for a moment. Only then did he remember that Yen Er was not only the crown prince of the Fire Clan, but also had two heavenly bloodlines. With Yen Er's talent to reach the origin core realm at the age of 11, he was also a rare top genius. If he wanted to enter the imperial residence, it shouldn't be too difficult. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but chuckle, I forgot that Yen Er, you are the number one genius of our sect. It won't be difficult for you to enter the imperial residence. However, your parents entrusted you to master and let you cultivate in the sky-bearing sect. If you want to go to Central State, you can't make the decision on your own. You have to report to master and your parents first and ask for their permission. Yen Er pursed his lips and nodded, okay, then I'll send a message to my parents later and ask for their opinion first. As for master, I can only wait for him to finish healing and then report to him. That's right. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile and looked at Ji Ku again. Ku, although Central State is prosperous and the martial arts realm is prosperous, there are various forces mixed in and it will be more dangerous. I have a reason to go to Central State, but I don't want you to take risks with me. It will be safer for you to stay in the sky-bearing sect. Ji Ku didn't listen to his dissuasion. She looked at him firmly and said in an unquestionable tone, Big brother Tianqing, Ku can listen to you about anything except this. From the day I left the Clear Sky Empire with you, I have already sworn in my heart that I will follow you for the rest of my life. No matter where you go, I will follow you. Even if it is a mountain of swords and a sea of flames, I will not shrink back. Ji Tianqing looked at her persistent eyes and didn't know how to persuade her for a while. Ji Ke continued, Big brother Tianqing, I know myself. With my talent, I may not be able to enter the monarch mansion. However, I don't have extravagant hopes of entering the monarch mansion, nor do I want to become a top genius. I just want to go to Central State with you. I'm satisfied to be able to accompany you. Since Ji Ke had already said so, what else could Ji Tianqing say? He could only nod with complicated feelings and said, Ke, since you have made up your mind, I won't persuade you anymore. Don't worry, I won't leave you alone. When I leave, I will definitely take you with me to Central State. Seeing that he finally agreed, Ji Ke's face was full of smiles and her heart was filled with joy. Regarding the matter of going to Central State, the three of them decided. Not long after, the three of them bid farewell to each other and returned to their respective residences. Ji Tianqing entered the secret chamber to recuperate while Yan quickly sent a message to the Fire Emperor and Fire Empress to ask for their opinion. Chapter 489. Soon, 5 days had passed. During these 5 days, Ji Tianqing had been recuperating in the secret room. Since he had fused with the Nirvana Divine Crystal, his injuries and strength had completely recovered. Moreover, his soul had become even stronger, and his soul energy was surging, causing his mind and spiritual sense to become even stronger. The spiritual sense of an ordinary 9th-level origin core martial artist could only explore an area of 90 meters. His soul energy was even stronger, and the range of his spiritual sense was twice as much as a martial artist of the same level. Most importantly, the battle with the Devil Emperor and the experience of his soul being separated from his body had stimulated an even stronger potential. His strength had imperceptibly increased, and he was getting closer and closer to the Heaven Origin stage. However, the shackle between the Origin Core stage and the Heaven Origin stage was a hurdle that countless martial artists were unable to cross. Ji Tianqing was unable to determine when he would be able to break through the shackle and advance to the Heaven Origin stage. He guessed in his heart that he might need an opportunity to advance to the Heaven Origin stage. This morning, his essence, energy, and spirit had all recovered to their peak state, so he finished recuperating and walked out of the secret room. He had just walked out of the secret room when the black-robed guard guarding outside respectfully reported a piece of news. Tianqing, Lord Sect Master has already come out of seclusion last night. Lord Sect Master has instructed you to go to the study to see him after you come out of seclusion. Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Master has only been in seclusion for 3 months, and he actually came out of seclusion so quickly? Could it be that his injuries have already healed? That's great. He felt puzzled in his heart, but he also felt gratified and excited. Presently, the Sky Pillar sect situation was not stable yet, and they were extremely short on manpower. It was difficult to support it with just Xiang Wuji alone. If Chu Tianqing's injuries were healed, he would be able to regain the authority of the sect master and manage the various affairs of the sect. That was naturally excellent. Ji Tianqing hurriedly left the secret room and quickly rushed to the study in Sky Pillar Hall. After a short while, he entered the spacious, bright, clean, and elegant study and saw Chu Tianqing whom he had not seen for a long time. Chu Tianqing, wearing a golden robe, was sitting at his desk, reading through the papers, concentrating on handling the affairs of the sect. His face was still a little pale, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. His eyes were also a little dim, not as sharp and dignified as before. Furthermore, he still had a head full of white hair. Ji Tianqing stepped into the study and cupped his hands in salute. Disciple pays respect to master. When Chu Tianqing heard his voice, he quickly put down the things in his hands and turned his head to look at him. Tianqing, come in quickly. Master has been waiting for you for a long time. Chu Tianqing smiled amiably and waved at him. Ji Tianqing walked to the desk and asked with concern, Shizuan, why did you come out early? Have your injuries healed? Chu Tianqing lightly shook his head, his tone calm as he said, while your master was in seclusion healing in the immortal cave, I was worried about our sect's safety, so after stabilizing my injuries, I came out of seclusion ahead of time. Although your master's injuries haven't healed completely, it's not a big problem. After another year of recuperation, I'll be completely healed. After saying this, he looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes, his face full of praise. I didn't think that in the 3 months that your master was in seclusion, our sect would encounter such a monstrous calamity. If you hadn't turned the tide and forced the demon emperor to retreat, our sect would have been annihilated a long time ago. Tianqing, your performance was just too shocking. Your master can't believe it. Obviously, after Chu Tianqing came out of seclusion, he had already understood what had happened. His pale face was full of smiles, his eyes full of gratification and pride. Ji Tianqing said calmly, Shizuan, those things are already in the past. Moreover, it wasn't just me who forced the demon emperor to retreat. Hundreds of people in our sect worked together to seriously injure the demon emperor, forcing him to flee. Chu Tianqing raised his hand to interrupt him, his voice firm. Tianqing, you don't need to be humble. You are the hero who saved our sect and the heavenly stellar region. After pausing for a moment, he continued, after your master came out of seclusion, I already talked to the Grand Elder. I also know that you were seriously injured and on the verge of death. Yunyao brought you back to Cloud Soul Palace. I heard the Grand Elder say that you are preparing to head to Central State and enter the Monarch Palace. Ji Tianqing nodded. Shizuan, I was just about to report this to you and ask for your opinion. Chu Tianqing smiled. You have a reason to go to the Monarch Palace, so why would your master stop you? Moreover, if you enter the Monarch Palace, not only will you have a brighter future, you will also gain the recognition of Cloud Soul Palace. Your master and the Grand Elder have the same thoughts. We both support your decision to head to Central State and enter the Monarch Palace. Thank you Shizuan for your help. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed. Chu Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to be so polite. He said with some emotion, back then, your master used the star map to predict that our sect would encounter a great calamity and your master would die. Therefore, your master made arrangements in advance, hoping to help you fight for a chance to survive. Your master only thought that even if the sect was destroyed and I died in the calamity, it was nothing. As long as you, Yun Yao, and Yen could survive and head to Central State to grow and gain experience, you would have a chance to take revenge in the future. However, man proposes, God disposes. I didn't expect that as soon as your master's plan was carried out, the demon clan would assassinate me and I had to go into seclusion to heal. Not long after, the calamity broke out and the demon emperor also broke the seal. Ji Tianqing listened to Chu Tianqing's words and frowned in confusion. Shizuan, you had a plan to let us leave the sect and head to Central State. Chu Tianqing nodded. That's right. You should remember that your master once asked you to go to the Beast King Valley to deliver something to the Beast King. In fact, your master wanted to ask the Beast King to take care of you and ask him to go to Central State first to make preparations. After he is ready in Central State, your master will let you leave the sect and go to Central State to find him. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing came to a sudden realization. He finally understood. No wonder before the great calamity broke out, Shizuan asked me to go to the Beast King Valley to deliver something to the Beast King. It turns out that Shizuan had predicted that he would die in battle and that the Sky Pillar sect would be destroyed. Therefore, he had already made preparations and thought of a way out for us. Unfortunately, the development of things later exceeded Shizuan's expectations and control, so he couldn't carry out his plans smoothly. Ji Tianqing stared at Chu Tianqing and asked, Shizuan, that senior Beast King, is he still in Central State? Chu Tianqing nodded and said, of course he is in Central State, and he is ready. In 2 days, you, Yen, Ji Ku, and the others will go to Central State to find the Beast King. You are very unfamiliar with Central State, so it will be inconvenient for you to do things. Only with the Beast King taking care of you can your master be at ease. Chapter 490. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yen Er's trip to the Central State obtained Chu Tianqing's approval. This matter was put on the agenda. Chu Tianqing's meaning was to wait for 10 days before Ji Tianqing's group of 3 set off. Because before Ji Tianqing went to the Central State, the Sky Pillar sect still needed him to do something big. That was to restore and rebuild the 9-Dragon Spirit Vein Grand Formation. As long as the Grand Formation wasn't activated, the Sky Pillar sect wouldn't be safe, and the disciples would always feel uneasy in their hearts. Moreover, without the protection of the 9-Dragon Spirit Vein Grand Formation, the Sky Pillar sect's spirit energy was extremely thin. Ji Tianqing had considered this matter long ago. Since Chu Tianqing brought it up first, he naturally wouldn't refuse. The master and disciple discussed for a moment before deciding to start the operation 2 days later. Ji Tianqing bid farewell to Chu Tianqing and left the study. After returning to his residence, he entered the secret chamber to circulate his cultivation and continue comprehending the 8th level of the Sword Heart Tao. He had already stayed at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage for 3 months, yet there were no signs of breaking through to the Sky Origin stage. If he wanted to advance to the Sky Origin stage, there were only 2 paths he could take. One was to cultivate bitterly day and night and use the method of dripping water to slowly break through the shackles of the Sky Origin stage. Or he could encounter some opportunity and obtain some good fortune and naturally reach the Sky Origin stage. However, opportunities and good fortune were illusory and unpredictable, and could only be encountered by chance and not sought. Ji Tianqing didn't expect to rely on good fortune to break through to the Sky Origin stage, as that was too unrealistic. What he could do was to cultivate diligently and allow his martial Tao foundation to be even more stable and his strength to be even more profound. Ji Tianqing sat upright in the secret chamber and concentrated on circulating his cultivation. He saw the spirit energy of heaven and earth from all directions surging over like flowing clouds and swiftly pouring into his body. His temperament was steady like a boulder, yet also like an abyss vortex that naturally devoured the spirit energy of heaven and earth and transformed it into boundless true essence in his body. Since he experienced the calamity of his body and soul being separated, his body had undergone a subtle change, and his aptitude and potential were even more perfect. His fleshly body was on the verge of collapse, but he came back from the dead. His reborn body was even more powerful than before. Both his strength and defense had doubled. Moreover, it was as transparent as a piece of spirit jade and was constantly absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After his soul had been severely injured, it had healed, and after fusing with the Nirvana divine crystal, it had become even more powerful. Not only was his spiritual sense stronger than that of ordinary martial artists, but he could also directly communicate with and control the spirit chi of heaven and earth, which made his cultivation speed and absorption of spirit chi faster. The amount of heaven and earth spirit chi he absorbed in a single day of cultivation was equivalent to 5 days of cultivation for a martial artist of the same realm. Ji Tianqing understood that this was the legendary unity of heaven and man. Only Sky Origin stage cultivators could reach such a level of martial arts. The cultivation of martial arts was actually a process of strengthening the body, exploring and comprehending the heaven and earth. When martial artists cultivated, absorbed heaven and earth spirit chi, set up great arrays, and so on, they were all absorbing the energy of all things in the world. For martial artists who had yet to reach Sky Origin stage, it was a little troublesome to absorb the energy of heaven and earth. They needed to meditate and breathe, or even use arrays and elixirs, etc. However, Sky Origin stage martial artists were different. Their bodies had long been developed and strengthened to the limit, becoming perfect and transparent. They could naturally communicate with and absorb the heaven and earth spirit chi. When martial artists' bodies were in harmony with heaven and earth, they could freely absorb and control the heaven and earth spirit qi. This was the so-called unity of heaven and man. Ji Tianqing's strength had yet to reach sky origin stage. However, he had already reached the unity of heaven and man realm and had a perfect body comparable to a sky origin stage cultivator. This was simply a miracle. Compared to his previous experience of having his body and soul separated and almost losing his life, this could be considered a blessing in disguise. Very quickly, 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. After 2 days of cultivation, Ji Tianqing's strength had increased a little, and his skills had become more profound. He stopped cultivating, left the secret room, and rushed to the sky-raising palace. When he entered the sky-raising palace, Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and a few other elders were already waiting in the main hall. Seeing him arrive, Chu Tiansheng said with a solemn expression, "Since everyone is here, I will announce an important matter. In the next few days, our sect will restore the spirit vein array and rebuild the 9 dragon spirit veins. This is related to our sect's 1,000 years of foundation, so we cannot afford to be careless or negligent. This time, the Grand Elder and Tianqing will work together to set up the spirit vein array. All the other elders will need to do their best to help." Hearing Chu Tianqing's order, the elders naturally hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed, indicating that they would obey. However, one of the elders hesitated and asked doubtfully, "Sect Master, we have all seen Tianqing's strength and battle prowess. However, our 9 dragon spirit vein array is a high-level sky origin array. It is very complicated and mysterious. Tianqing's strength has yet to reach sky origin stage. I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to take charge of the array." Chu Tiansheng raised his eyebrows and revealed a playful smile. He explained, "Tianqing may not have reached sky origin stage, but his attainments in array Dao are already at the Grandmaster stage. Back then, it was he who broke the Dragon Mountain Ancient Tomb's protective array. That's a top-notch Tianyuan Grand formation. Even I and the Grand Supreme Elder are helpless against it. Tianqing's attainments in array Dao have already surpassed mine. He can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Grand Elder. Is there anything wrong with letting him take part in setting up the array?" The elder immediately smiled embarrassedly and hurriedly cupped his hands and apologized, "Please forgive me, Sect Master. It was my negligence." Then, he cast an apologetic look at Ji Tianqing. Although Ji Tianqing was only the Sect Master's disciple, he was now the great hero who saved the sky-bearing sect and Tianshan region. All the elders in the sect were extremely respectful to him. At this time, Xiang Wuji spoke again, "I have already prepared all the materials needed to restore the spirit vein array. If no one has any objections, then let's start today." Then, everyone left the sky-bearing palace and began to set up the array. The spirit vein array was led by Xiang Wuji and Ji Tianqing, with Chu Tiansheng and the 7 elders assisting from the side. Ji Tianqing and Xiang Wuji flew to the sky above the Red Cloud Peak. They stood in the sky with a serious expression, overlooking the entire sect. Chu Tiansheng and the 7 elders were scattered to the other 8 peaks to assist Ji Tianqing and Xiang Wuji. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and Xiang Wuji began to move. The 2 of them waved their hands and scattered thousands of spiritual crystals and gems. They placed them on the peaks according to the array's position, setting up the array's foundation. Then, the 2 of them continuously waved their palms, creating dazzling true essence flowers in the sky, connecting the 9 peaks with invisible veins. Chu Tiansheng and the 7 elders also became busy. They did their best to set up the array's foundation and stabilize the array's veins. Restoring and rebuilding the spirit vein array was an extremely complicated and vast project. Even with Ji Tianqing and Xiang Wuji's strength, it took them a total of 9 days and 9 nights to set up the spirit vein array successfully. After 9 days, the 2 of them had exhausted all their strength and were extremely tired and weak. Chu Tiansheng and the 7 elders were also mentally and physically exhausted, both physically and mentally. Fortunately, the spirit vein array was successfully rebuilt. Soon, the 9-dragon spirit vein would be formed again, allowing the sky-bearing sect to quickly recover. Many brothers asked Little He about the martial realms in the book. Little He listed them out for everyone to take a look. There were 5 realms above the Heaven Origin Realm, Soul Refinement Realm, Essence Soul Realm, 9th Tribulation Realm, Martial Sage Realm, and Martial God Realm. Chapter 491. Ji Tianqing could finally leave with peace of mind now that the Spirit Vein Grand Formation had been rebuilt. He returned to the secret chamber and recuperated for 5 whole days. After 5 days, his strength had recovered to its peak state. Only then did he take Ji, Ku and Yen, and prepare to leave for the middle state. Early in the morning, Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and a few other elders gathered at the top of the Crimson Cloud Peak to send them off. Even many deacons and disciples rushed over when they heard the news. They gathered at the square in front of the hall and waved their hands reluctantly. Before they left, Chu Tiansheng and Xiang Wuji gave Ji Tianqing and the others earnest advice. Tianqing, when you reach the middle state, you must protect yourself and learn more. Under the care of the Beast King, you must adapt to the environment of the middle state as soon as possible. The middle state is the holy land of martial arts. It is vast and filled with experts. For you, it is the most magnificent stage, but also the most difficult challenge. Don't be impatient. First, stand firm in the middle state, then slowly plan for the future. Even if you go to the middle state, don't forget about the Sky Pillar sect. You must remember that we will always be behind you and silently support you. This old man will wait for the day when you become famous and return with honor. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yen remembered their advice. After a while, the 3 of them bowed to Chu Tiansheng and the others and left the Crimson Cloud Peak on their spirit beasts. Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and the others stood at the square in front of the hall for a long time. Everyone looked on reluctantly as Ji Tianqing and the others disappeared into the horizon. Only then did they disperse. Qian Yu carried Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku and sped through the sky, heading north. Yen rode on the wildfire white tiger and sped through the mountains and rivers, following closely behind Qian Yu. Qian Yu and the white tiger traveled day and night, only stopping once every 3 days to rest and recover their strength. In this way, it would take them more than a month to reach the middle state from the Star Ancient Realm. Among the 3 of them, apart from Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku and Yen, had never been to Zhongzhou. They were filled with curiosity and yearning for the mysterious central continent, and their hearts were filled with longing. Of course, they had never left their homes and gone to such a faraway place, so they couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. However, when Ji Ku and Yen had such thoughts, their hearts would calm down as long as they saw Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm and determined. His temperament was indifferent and calm, which always made them feel safe and at ease. As long as Ji Tianqing was by their side, they were fearless and full of hope for the future. Time flew by. Very quickly, 1.5 months had passed. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 had traveled for 45 days. They had passed through quite a few human territories and crossed thousands of mountains and rivers before they finally arrived at the central province. That evening, the sun was setting in the west. Qian Yu was flying high in the sky, and Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were sitting cross-legged on its back. Both of them looked tired, and their brows were filled with exhaustion. Ji Tianqing was resting with his eyes closed, silently absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to recover his strength. Ji Ku opened her big clear eyes, looking down at the mountains and rivers below, admiring the magnificent scenery of the central province. At this time, she saw a vast and flat plain in front of her. On the vast and boundless land, a huge black city appeared. She looked down from the sky and saw that the city was very majestic and magnificent. She could feel the vigorous atmosphere blowing in her face. The huge city covered at least a few hundred miles in radius, and she couldn't see the end of it at a glance. The most peculiar thing was that the city was actually circular. During their journey, Ji Ku had seen many ancient cities of the central province. Those cities were all squarish and normal. As for the huge city in front of them, not only was it several times larger than a normal city, it was also circular in shape. Ji Ku looked at the huge city curiously and couldn't help but ask, "Big brother Tianqing, look at the city in front of us. It seems a little strange." Ji Tianqing, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked forward calmly. When he saw the huge black city, a smile flashed across his eyes, and he said, "It has a radius of 800 miles, and the city is huge and round. It symbolizes stability in all directions and benefits the four seas. Cuckoo, we have arrived. That is the number one holy city in the profound sky continent, the central province city." When Ji Ku heard this, her beautiful face immediately revealed a look of surprise and anticipation. So this is the legendary central province city, the gathering place of all the strong people in the world. No wonder I felt that the city was a little strange. It has a vigorous and ancient aura, leaving a deep impression. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "Master said that the Beast King had arrived in the central province city a few months ago and had already prepared everything. After we enter the central province city, we will first find the Beast King and meet up with him." Not long after, Qian Yu descended from the sky and landed in front of the 100-zhang tall southern city gate. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yan stood side by side on a straight and wide bluestone road, looking at the central province city in front of them. They saw that this ancient city with nearly 10,000 years of history quietly stood in the vast world. The black city wall was 100 zhang tall and was built with huge black stones. Its surface was covered with wind and frost carvings and the marks of time. Above the 100 zhang tall city gate, there were three simple and strong words carved on the stone wall of the city wall. Central Province City. The bluestone road under their feet extended all the way to the huge city gate. The 100-meter wide city gate was guarded by dozens of black armored guards on both sides. Those guards had ramrod-straight figures, icy cold and indifferent expressions, and their entire bodies emitted a dignified and murderous aura. Ji Tianqing noticed with a few glances that the strengths of those black armored guards had all reached the 7th level of the profound convergence stage or above. The two captains of the guards that were dressed as captains had strengths that had reached the 5th level of the origin core stage. 5th level origin core stage martial artists could be called experts in the 9 regions of the southern continent. Whereas in the sacred land of martial arts, the central province, a 5th level origin core stage martial artist could only be called an expert and be a captain of the city guard. Of course, with these black armored guards guarding the city gate, the martial artists of the various clans that entered and left the central province city were all well behaved and would absolutely not dare cause trouble. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yan walked along the bluestone road towards the city gate. Although they brought along Qian Yu and the wildfire white tiger, these two spirit beasts had enormous figures that were extremely conspicuous. But the martial artists that entered and left the central province city mostly rode on spirit beasts. Those spirit beasts had all sorts of strange appearances, and there were all sorts of clans, causing them to be even more conspicuous. However, everyone had calm and indifferent expressions. Obviously, they'd long since become accustomed to it. After a short moment, Ji Tianqing's group of 3 passed through the city gate and entered the central province city. They walked on the wide and perfectly straight street and saw countless experts in the martial Tao, and there were also xeno-race martial artists with strange appearances. On both sides of the street were row upon row of tall buildings and palaces, and there were also shops that were filled with a dazzling lineup and various strange places. Chapter 492. Ji Tianqing's group of 3 walked around the city as they observed their surroundings. It was truly an eye-opening experience. In this ancient and majestic city, not only were there many humans living here, there were also some demon race and water race martial artists. The three of them strolled around the city for an hour and saw many foreign race martial artists. On the surface, these foreign race martial artists looked somewhat similar to humans. However, their clothes clearly carried a rough and valiant foreign race aura, making it easy for people to distinguish them. Some of the demon race martial artists had hair of different colors. Their bodies were tall and sturdy, as thick and sturdy as wild beasts. They only wore animal skin aprons and waistcoats, revealing their thick hair and muscular limbs. There were also some water race martial artists. All of them had golden hair, their eyes were blue in color, and their bodies were tall and slender. They also wore long robes or leather armor like humans, but if one looked carefully, they would find that their arms and necks were covered with a layer of fine scales. Ji Tianqing's group even saw the legendary dwarf race. Those sturdy dwarves, regardless of gender or age, were all less than half a meter tall. Most of them used short axes as weapons and liked to grow full beards, tying their beards into a dozen small braids. Ji Tianqing's group of three became more and more curious the more they looked. Every time they saw a foreign race, they would take a few more looks. However, all of this, to the people of Central State City, could not be more normal. When Yan, and Ji Ku curiously stared at these foreign race cultivators didn't feel embarrassed or angry. There were even some foreign race martial artists who smiled at them, making them feel a little embarrassed. The three of them strolled around the city for an hour and were dazzled by all kinds of strange things. They had long been shocked to the point of numbness. Ji Ku said with a heart full of joy, "Big brother Tianqing, Central State City is really as the legends say, strange and colorful, mysterious and vast. This place is too interesting." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "This is the holy land of martial arts in the profound sky continent. Naturally, martial artists of various races will gather here, as well as many martial arts experts. Once we find the Beast King and settle down in the city, you can wander around as much as you want. At that time, you will definitely discover more amazing people and things." Yan hurriedly nodded and said expectantly, "Well, then let's go find the Beast King." Ji Tianqing didn't waste any more time. He brought Ji Ku and Yan to the Fish Dragon Alley in South City. Before coming to Central State, Chu Tiansheng had told him to go to Fish Dragon Alley's Cool Breeze Courtyard to find the Beast King. The three of them had just arrived in Central State City, so they were very unfamiliar with the layout of the city. They spent about 2 hours asking the passers-by several times before they finally found the Fish Dragon Alley. The Fish Dragon Alley was located at the edge of the southern part of the city. It was not as bustling as the city. The surroundings of the alley were quiet and secluded. The stone path was clean and elegant, and the roadside was filled with tall spiritual trees, spiritual flowers, and spiritual herbs. Walking in the Fish Dragon Alley, one could only feel that the spiritual energy was abundant, and the environment was elegant, making one feel relaxed and happy. There were a total of 6 mansions on both sides of the Fish Dragon Alley that was more than 1.5 kilometers long. All of them were mansions that occupied a large area and had a magnificent aura. Moreover, Ji Tianqing could see that every mansion was protected by the Heaven Origin Grand Formation that set up layers of restrictions and checkpoints. Even if there were no guards guarding the entrance of the mansion, nobody could easily enter the mansion. The Cool Breeze Courtyard was located in the deepest part of the Fish Dragon Alley. This mansion was similar to the other 5 mansions. It occupied an area of 1,000 meters with a dignified aura, and the environment was quiet and secluded. When the three of them walked to the entrance of the Cool Breeze Courtyard, they saw a human guard in a black robe at the entrance. The guard actually had a strength at the 3rd level of the Origin Core stage. His eyes were bright, and his aura was extremely valiant and cold. Ji Tianqing walked to the entrance and talked to the black-robed guard, explaining his identity and the purpose of his visit. The black-robed guard asked for a moment before he entered the courtyard to report the news. After a short moment, a series of heavy footsteps sounded from the courtyard. Subsequently, a snow-white six-armed white ape that was over 10 feet tall arrived at the entrance. When the six-armed white ape saw Ji Tianqing, it revealed a kind expression and nodded to him in greeting. "Young man, we meet again." Ji Tianqing greeted it as well. "White ape, I didn't expect you to come to Central State City as well." "Yes, I'm not only the Beast King's disciple, but also his servant." "Of course, I have to follow him," the white ape explained. "The entrance isn't a place to talk. Come in quickly. The Beast King has been waiting for you for a long time." Subsequently, the white ape led Ji Tianqing and the other two into the cool breeze courtyard. The courtyard's environment was elegant. Not only did it have a garden and a small lake, but it also had pavilions, terraces, and waterside pavilions. It was rather elegant and otherworldly. The white ape led Ji Tianqing and the other two through two courtyards and entered the last main courtyard. The three of them waited in the guest hall for a moment before the Beast King rushed over to meet them after hearing the news. The Beast King still looked the same as before. He was tall and thin, wore a white robe, and had gray hair and a long beard. He had the demeanor of an otherworldly expert. After entering the guest hall, he exchanged some pleasantries with Ji Tianqing and the other two before taking a seat. The Beast King looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes and said with a sigh, "Nephew Tianqing, your master has told this old man about what happened to the Sky Pillar sect in detail. This old man really didn't expect that the Sky Pillar sect would suffer such a calamity and almost be destroyed in the war. But what surprised this old man even more was that nephew actually grew up so quickly. When the sect encountered such a calamity, you were able to stand up and repel the demon emperor. This is simply inconceivable." Ji Tianqing nodded with an indifferent expression and said in a calm voice, "Senior Beast King, this matter has already passed for several months, so there's no need to mention it. Now that the three of us have come to Central State, we hope that Senior can take care of us in the future." The Beast King stroked his beard and said with an amiable smile, "Nephew is too polite. This old man and your master are life and death friends. Since he entrusted the three of you to this old man, how could this old man not do his best to take care of you?" Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said, "Since that's the case, I will have to trouble Senior." The Beast King nodded and said in a gentle tone, "Nephew, you must be very tired after rushing to Central State City. This old man has already prepared a place for you to stay. You should first settle down and rest. After you recover your strength, this old man will take you around the city to adapt to the environment as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing didn't immediately agree. After thinking for a moment, he asked, "Senior, my master must have already told you that I came to Central State this time to join the Monarch Mansion. Senior, please tell me about the Monarch Mansion so that I can prepare." Chapter 493. The Beast King looked at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious tone, "The Monarch Mansion is the most mysterious and powerful institution in the Central State. It is also the most sacred place of martial arts in the Tianxian continent. I believe Tianqing already knows about this, right?" Ji Tianqing nodded and did not say anything. He listened quietly. The Beast King continued, "There is no need for me to elaborate on the power and mystery of the Monarch Mansion. I believe you already know. You only need to know that even the imperial courts of the Human Clan, Demon Clan, and Water Clan fear and respect the Monarch Mansion. You can understand how high the status of the Monarch Mansion is. As the saying goes, great hermits hide in the city. The Monarch Mansion that is extremely mysterious in the eyes of ordinary people is actually in the Central State City. However, the Monarch Mansion is in an alternate space, just like the ancient realm of the Heavenly Stellar region. The entrance to the alternate space is near the Forest of Divine Steels in the city. Although there is no one guarding there, there is a mysterious barrier set up. No one can enter without permission. Only the divine masters and princes of the Monarch Mansion are qualified to enter and leave the Monarch Mansion freely." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing could not help but raise his eyebrows and asked in confusion, "May I ask, Senior, what is the meaning of divine masters and princes?" The Beast King explained slowly, although the monarch mansion is the #1 sacred place of martial arts in the continent, there are not many people in it. It is said that there is a mansion master, 10 divine masters, and more than 50 princes. The mansion master of the monarch mansion is recognized as the #1 elite warrior in the continent. However, that mansion master's whereabouts were mysterious. He was elusive, and the number of people who had seen his true appearance could be counted on one hand. He has not appeared for nearly 100 years. The things in the monarch mansion are all managed by the 10 divine masters. The 10 divine masters are all elite warriors of the refined soul stage. They each have their own duties and teach the cultivation of more than 50 princes. Each genius who enters the monarch mansion to cultivate is called princes to show their respect and dignity. When those princes surpass the heavenly yuan stage and reach the refined soul stage, they will receive the title of emperor. Each princes are the top talents of their respective clans. They come from the most powerful families and forces of their respective clans. Their status is unparalleled and they can move freely in the Tianxian continent. The powerful forces of the various races would not easily offend them, and would even think of ways to rope them in. It's because if those princes do not die prematurely, they will certainly become elite warriors at the refined soul stage. They will be all-powerful and look down on the Tianxian land. After listening to the Beast King's narration, not only did Ji Tianqing yearn for it, but even Yan, and Ji Ku were overwhelmed with emotions. They were rather envious and respectful. Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment before he said, "I didn't expect that the #1 martial Dao Holy Land on the continent would only accept 50 princes. From the looks of it, those 50+ princes are the top geniuses of the entire continent." The Beast King nodded in agreement. "That's right. On the Tianxian land, there were countless geniuses from different clans. However, only the most outstanding 50 people were qualified to enter the monarch mansion. Nephew Tianqing, entering the monarch mansion is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. You must be mentally prepared." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and asked, "Senior, did you find out when the imperial monarch mansion will be recruiting the imperial princes? If one wants to enter, what are the requirements?" The Beast King nodded slightly and said with a serious tone, "The imperial monarch mansion will not take the initiative to recruit the imperial princes and there is no set time for the examination. As long as the geniuses from different clans meet the basic requirements of the imperial monarch mansion, they can hand in their visiting cards at any time and accept the examination." Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of expectation and asked, "What are the basic requirements of the imperial monarch mansion?" The Beast King extended 2 fingers and said with a sonorous tone, "There are only 3 requirements. First, you must have strength above the Yuan Dan stage. Second, you must have 1 or more heavenly bloodlines. Third, you must not be over 30 years old." When Ji Tianqing heard this, he instantly frowned in confusion. These 3 requirements seem very high, but they are not too rare. Yan also nodded in agreement and said with a face full of expectation, "If that's the case, I also meet the basic requirements." The Beast King stroked his beard and nodded. "That's right. In the central state, there are at least 8,000 people with heavenly bloodlines and Yuan Dan stage strength under the age of 30. But among these geniuses, only 50 or so people can stand out and become the emperor of the imperial monarch mansion. Because the basic requirements of the imperial monarch mansion are not too high, but the entrance examination is very harsh. If you want to become the emperor, not only must you have a strong identity and background, you must also defeat a certain emperor." Hearing this, Yan was immediately disappointed and muttered with a bitter face, "To have a strong identity and background, you still have to defeat an emperor? Then I definitely have no hope." Ji Tianqing also frowned and said in a serious tone, "This examination method is indeed harsh. Every emperor is a top genius and must be very strong. If anyone can defeat an emperor, they are indeed qualified to become the new emperor. The examination method of the imperial monarch mansion is harsh but also very reasonable. At this time, Yen-er frowned and thought for a moment and asked doubtfully, Senior Beast King, what if a certain emperor has a close relationship with the challenger and deliberately loses to the challenger? The Beast King chuckled and shook his head. This is absolutely impossible. When the challenger fights with the emperor, there will be a god master present to supervise the battle. If the situation you mentioned occurs, not only will the challenger be disqualified, but the emperor will also be expelled from the imperial monarch mansion. Moreover, every emperor's son was a prodigy, a future overlord. They have noble identities, strong backgrounds, and powerful strength. Of course, they cherish their wings and will not destroy their own reputation. Yen-er nodded to show that she understood and did not interrupt. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and asked the Beast King, Senior, since the examination of the imperial monarch mansion is so harsh, then the 50 or so disciples should all be heaven origin stage experts, right? The Beast King shook his head and said in a playful tone, this is not necessarily the case. There are very few people who, although not heaven origin stage experts, can become the emperor with a strong enough identity and background. For example, the descendants of the imperial court and the direct descendants of the ancient families may be accepted by the imperial monarch mansion. When Ji Tianqing heard the words, ancient families, he naturally thought of the Cloud Spirit Palace. He thought to himself, I wonder if eldest senior sister will enter the imperial monarch mansion. The Beast King saw that he was silent and looked a little serious, so he smiled and comforted him. Tianqing, there's no hurry to enter the imperial monarch mansion. I suggest you rest for a few days and then slowly plan this matter in the future. Anyway, you're still young. Even if you wait for another 3 to 5 years, you won't exceed the deadline. Hee hee. The Beast King made a joke to comfort Ji Tianqing. However, he did not know that Ji Tianqing only wanted to enter the imperial monarch mansion as soon as possible so that he could see Yin Yao as soon as possible. Brothers, please remember to vote for me, please. Chapter 494. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yen-er settled down in the Qingfeng courtyard. Although the courtyard was very big, there were not many people living in it. Other than the Beast King, White Ape, the guards, and Ji Tianqing, there were only 20 servants and maids. As a result, the Qingfeng courtyard was very quiet and peaceful. It was very suitable for living and cultivation. The heaven and earth spirit qi in the central state was incomparably dense, and a powerful spirit gathering formation was set up in the Qingfeng courtyard. Everyone lived in the Qingfeng courtyard, and their cultivation speed was faster than in the sky-bearing sect. Unknowingly, 4 days passed in a flash. After 4 days of recuperation, Ji Tianqing and the other two recovered their strength and returned to their peak state. At the same time, Ji Tianqing gradually learned about the central state city. The central state was located in the center of the Tianxian continent. It was very vast and rich in resources. In the vast central state, there were all kinds of races living. There were at least tens of thousands of cities. The southern region was under the jurisdiction of the human imperial court. In those cities and villages, the people living there were basically humans. There were very few foreign races. The eastern region was naturally under the jurisdiction of the water race imperial court. The western region was undoubtedly the territory of the demon race imperial court. And the central state city was located in the center of the central state. It was also the center of the entire Tianxian continent. It was a truly peaceful and neutral land. No matter what race they were, they could live in the central state city. As long as they did not violate the laws of the central state city, they would not be in any danger. On the surface, the central state city was under the jurisdiction of the city lord's mansion, but everyone in the city knew that the monarch's mansion was the master of the city. In fact, the entire central state was under the jurisdiction of the monarch's mansion. If the monarch's mansion had any orders or announcements, the various imperial courts would not dare to neglect or violate them. In short, the central state city was worthy of being the #1 sacred city in the Tian-Shan continent. Its status was extraordinary and profound. On the morning of the 5th day, the three of them left the Qingfeng courtyard and strolled around the city. The Beast King wanted to send White Ape with them as a guide to help them familiarize themselves with the situation in the city. However, Ji Tianqing had other plans, so he rejected the Beast King's good intentions. He brought Ji Ku and Yen out of Qingfeng courtyard. He asked passers-by about the location of the Forest of Divine Monuments and rushed there. This was because he was still thinking about the imperial residence and wanted to personally go to the Forest of Divine Monuments to take a look. The three of them strolled around at a leisurely pace. As they felt the great vicissitudes of central state city's atmosphere and strange and variegated scenery, their moods also became much more relaxed. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing and the other two arrived at the vicinity of the Divine Steel Forest. The Forest of Divine Steels was located near the plaza in the middle of the city. It was a forest of steels with a radius of several thousand meters. In the forest of steels that looked like a cemetery, there were tens of thousands of tall steels. Most of the stone tablets had been eroded by the passage of time, and the words on them were somewhat blurred. Every stone tablet was inscribed with the name and honorific title of a soul refinement realm expert. It also recorded the achievements and glory of that person. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment and discovered that the soul refinement realm experts recorded on the 10,000 divine steels came from various races. And these soul refinement realm experts all came from the imperial residence. He had heard from the Beast King that as long as the imperial prince of the imperial residence reached the soul refinement realm and obtained the imperial rank honorific title, he would be qualified to set up a divine steel here. The tens of thousands of divine steels in the Forest of Divine Monuments meant that the imperial residence had cultivated tens of thousands of soul refinement realm experts in the past thousands of years. Ji Ku and Yen also understood this point, so they followed Ji Tianqing's footsteps and walked into the depths of the Forest of Divine Monuments, looking at the various divine steels along the way. After an hour, Ji Tianqing and the other two passed through the Forest of Divine Monuments and walked to the end of the Black Stone Road. At the end of the road in front of the three of them, there stood a majestic door that was about 100 meters wide and 1,000 meters tall. The door was made of mysterious black stone. Even after thousands of years of wind and rain, it was still indestructible and exuded an ancient and powerful aura. There was no door at the entrance, and it was sealed by a colorful light barrier. It was obviously a super-large array. Only people who knew how to break it or had the corresponding token could enter and exit the door. Above the majestic door, on the ancient and wide lintel, there were 4 large words carved in bold calligraphy. Emperor of all ages. When Ji Tianqing saw the 4 large words, he immediately understood that this simple and powerful black door was the entrance to the imperial residence. After passing through the barrier formation that sealed the door, one could enter the imperial residence. He used his spiritual sense to carefully investigate the barrier formation and found that the grade of this formation was far beyond the heavenly origin grade. It was incomparably mysterious and complex. With his master-level array attainments, he could not see through the barrier formation at all. He could not even see the veins of the formation. The truth was just as the Beast King said. There was only one barrier formation at the entrance of the imperial residence. There was no need for guards at all. Just as Ji Tianqing looked up to size up the barrier formation, light footsteps came from behind him, and there was a voice full of surprise. Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and hurriedly turned his head to look behind him. He saw a handsome young man in a golden robe with a noble temperament walking towards him. The handsome young man with a dignified appearance was none other than the Son of Heaven, Long Yunxiao, whom he had not seen for a long time. Long Yunxiao stepped in front of Ji Tianqing and asked with a puzzled look, Ji Tianqing. You actually came to the central province? What are you doing here? Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said calmly, "This is the entrance to the imperial residence. What do you think I can do here?" Long Yunxiao immediately raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Ji Tianqing, you can't be telling me that you want to enter the imperial residence and become the emperor, right? Why not?" Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and exuded a confident and calm aura. Long Yunxiao sized him up and couldn't help but smile. He nodded and said, "I haven't seen you for 5 months, and you've actually reached the half-step heaven's origin stage. You've indeed improved very quickly. However, I have to remind you of something. In another month, I will choose a heavenly concubine in the Apocalypse Tower and announce it to the world." Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "Of course, I won't forget such an important matter. Long Yunxiao, I will definitely climb up the Apocalypse Tower and have a fair battle with you. I will defeat you in front of all the powerful cultivators in the world. I hope you still remember what you said before. After I defeat you, I won't force Yunyao to become a heavenly concubine." Long Yunxiao's eyes became even more playful. He nodded and said, "I'm a man of my words. I won't go back on my words. If you can really defeat me, I will voluntarily withdraw and not pester Yunyao anymore. Moreover, don't you want to enter the imperial residence? Coincidentally, I have already entered the imperial residence 2 years ago and became the 53rd emperor. If you can defeat me, you can pass the test of the imperial residence and become the new emperor. There will be one more later. Brothers, sorry to keep you waiting." Chapter 495. Upon hearing Long Yunxiao's words, Ji Tianqing realized that he had become a Thearcha's son. His eyes lit up as he smiled playfully. He said to Long Yunxiao, "He, if that's the case, I have to thank you. Since we are going to have a duel at the Apocalypse Tower in a month's time, I will send a letter to the Imperial Palace and challenge you. This is the best of both worlds, which is exactly what I want." Long Yunxiao frowned and said proudly, "Ji Tianqing, you are very confident, but you are overconfident. Although you have improved a lot in the past 5 months, you are still just a half-step to ethereal stage cultivator. I would like to see if you can break through the shackles of ethereal stage in a month's time. Not long ago, I had reached the 2nd level of the sky origin stage. When we duel at the Apocalypse Tower in a month's time, I will not show you any mercy. You don't even have the slightest hope of winning." Long Yunxiao's expression and tone were even more confident than Ji Tianqing's, as if he was determined to win. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said coldly, "It is too early for you to say that. Let's duel in a month's time." "All right, it's a deal." Long Yunxiao nodded and walked past him to the entrance of the imperial palace. However, when he reached the entrance, he stopped in his tracks. He turned around and looked at Ji Tianqing. He smiled and said playfully, "By the way, I have something to tell you. A month ago, Yunyao entered the imperial palace and became the 55th Thearcha's son. She is now cultivating in the imperial palace. I will take good care of her. Don't worry, he. After that, Long Yunxiao took out the Thearcha's token from his infinite space ring and walked through the door. He disappeared after passing through the colorful barrier. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly in his sleeves. Although he clearly knew that Long Yunxiao was definitely deliberately provoking him and infuriating him. However, he hadn't seen Yunyao for a few months and didn't know how Yunyao was doing recently. He was too worried and concerned about Yunyao, so it was impossible for him to remain indifferent. Of course, he was furious. Ji Ku and Yen were also angered by Ji Tianqing's words and attitude. They hurriedly opened their mouths to comfort Ji Tianqing. Yen said angrily, "Senior brother Tianqing, don't listen to Long Yunxiao's nonsense. He's just trying to provoke you. He's too bad." Ji Ku also comforted him, "Brother Tianqing, you know eldest senior sister's nature better than we do. You should believe that eldest senior sister will definitely not have a good impression of Long Yunxiao. Yen hurriedly nodded in agreement. Yes, we have to believe in eldest senior sister. She definitely won't be nice to Long Yunxiao. In a moment, Ji Tianqing suppressed the anger in his heart and calmed down. He looked at Ji Ku and Yen Seeing their concerned expressions, he smiled and said, "It's okay. You don't have to persuade me. I know what I'm doing." If eldest senior sister could accept Long Yunxiao, she would have accepted him a few years ago. Why would she leave Zhongzhou and go to the Sky Pillar sect? Long Yunxiao's provocation means that he can't get close to eldest senior sister for the time being. Since eldest senior sister has already entered the monarch mansion, I have to enter the monarch mansion as soon as possible to see her again. Speaking of this, he looked at the entrance of the monarch mansion with burning eyes and said in a sonorous tone, "1 month later, I will defeat Long Yunxiao at the Apocalypse Pagoda no matter what." Seeing that he wasn't angered and was even more determined, Ji Ku and Yen both smiled. Yen clenched her fists and said with determination, "Senior brother Tianqing, I believe that you can defeat that despicable Long Yunxiao." Ji Ku also said with anticipation, "Brother Tianqing, you can only win the battle at the Apocalypse Pagoda. After you defeat Long Yunxiao, not only will you make him withdraw, but you will also become famous and enter the monarch mansion. You will become a noble emperor. This is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Yes, of course." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Then, he turned around and left with Ji Ku and Yen After the 3 of them left the Forest of Divine Monuments, they returned to the Qinfeng courtyard. Ji Tianqing had made up his mind. In the next month, he would cultivate in seclusion and do everything he could to break through to the ethereal realm. The battle at the Apocalypse Pagoda was very important. He would not lose, and he couldn't lose. An hour later, the 3 of them were walking on a bustling street in the city. Suddenly, they heard a commotion in front of them. The bustling crowd on the street immediately parted to both sides and moved to the side of the road. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, and Yen were walking in the middle of the street when they saw the crowd parting. The 3 of them were confused as they looked at the empty street in front of them. At the end of the street, there was a large group of people walking toward them with a majestic aura. It was a group of about 200 guards of honor. They looked majestic and luxurious. They looked even more majestic than the emperor when he went on an inspection tour. There were 16 Primal Core Realm elites in black armor. They were so tall that they didn't look like humans. They were riding on huge white dragon colts and were leading the way for the group. Behind the 16 white dragon steeds, there were more than 100 demon clan guards who were as tall and sturdy as iron towers. Although they were more than 1,000 steps away, Ji Tianqing could feel the ferocious and murderous aura that the demon guards were emitting. In the middle of the group of demon guards was an extremely luxurious emperor's chariot. It was dazzling with golden light. The emperor's chariot was like a small moving palace. It had a radius of 10 meters. It was made of heavenly fire true gold and was inlaid with a dazzling array of precious gems and spiritual jades. On the round canopy of the emperor's chariot, there were countless chains of pearls and gems hanging down. They covered the inside of the emperor's chariot like a curtain, making it hazy and unreal. Around the emperor's chariot, there were more than 60 beautiful foreign race women. Some were holding jade rui, some were carrying flower baskets, and some were carrying pipa and musical instruments. All in all, this luxurious and magnificent non-humankind troupe almost filled up the entire street. The people on the street all stood on the side of the street and looked up at the guards of honor. Their faces were full of awe and excitement. Ji Tianqing and the other 2 came back to their senses. They also walked to the side of the street and stood still, silently watching the guards of honor as they walked over. At this time, many warriors and commoners around the 3 of them were also discussing in low voices. That seems to be the demon race's Kunwu prince. What a grand display! Don't you know? Kunwu Prince entered the emperor's mansion 2 years ago and became the noble emperor's son. It's actually the emperor's son. Oh my god, this is the first time I've seen the legendary emperor's son. He's really noble and sacred. The 6th chapter has arrived. Sorry for the long wait. These few days, little he will try to adjust the chapters as much as possible and try to update all the chapters at once at 10 a.m. every day. Thank you for your support and understanding. Chapter 496. Ji Ku and Yen could understand Ji Tianqing's mood. However, Ji Ku said with a worried face, "Brother Tianqing, there are too many people here. I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to sneak into the honor guard." Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained to her, "Ku, don't worry. I won't follow Kunwa's honor guard here. I'll go to the Forest of Divine Monuments first. When the entrance of the monarch mansion opens, I'll take the opportunity to sneak into the honor guard. No one is near the Forest of Divine Monuments. As long as I'm careful, I won't be discovered." Yen said with a worried face, "Senior brother Tianqing, even if you can sneak into the monarch mansion, it's a mysterious and powerful holy land. I'm afraid your whereabouts will be exposed soon." Ji Tianqing frowned and said in a deep voice, "Now is a great opportunity. If I miss this opportunity, I don't know how many days I'll have to wait. After I sneak into the monarch mansion, I'll act according to the circumstances. Don't worry." Ji Ku was still a little worried and asked, "Brother Tianqing, even if you can sneak into the monarch mansion, how are you going to get out?" Ji Tianqing already had a plan and explained, "I'll find senior sister. She will definitely have a way to send me out of the monarch mansion." At this time, Yen suddenly thought of something and quickly took out a dark golden talisman from her space ring and handed it to him. "Senior brother Tianqing, I have a way. This is an invisibility talisman specially made by our fire tribe. It's a heavenly origin talisman. Maybe it can help you achieve your wish." The fire tribe was born with the ability to control fire. They were good at drawing talismans and making talismans. They could make all kinds of magical talismans. Before Yen left the fire tribe, the fire emperor and fire empress prepared many powerful talismans for him in case of emergencies. Ji Tianqing saw the talisman in Yen's hand and suddenly showed a look of surprise. "Invisibility talisman? Yen, you actually have such a magical talisman?" Yen nodded and said with a smile, "This invisibility talisman was personally made by my father using the top talisman Dao's secret method. I never had the chance to use it before, but now I can finally put it to good use." "Well, that's much easier." Ji Tianqing's expression eased a lot. He nodded and thanked Yen, "Thank you." While casting a spell to activate the power in the talisman, Yen explained to him, "Senior brother Tianqing, this is a special talisman of our fire tribe. Only the power of our fire tribe can use it. After I use this talisman to make you invisible, it can only last for 4 hours at most. You must make good use of the time." As his voice fell, the dark golden talisman turned into a wisp of golden flame, enveloping Ji Tianqing's body. A miraculous scene appeared. Ji Tianqing's body became thin and transparent. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into thin air. Ji Ku's eyes suddenly widened, and her pretty face revealed a look of deep surprise. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and looked at his transparent body. He couldn't help but praise, "This invisibility talisman is indeed mysterious. It actually has such a miraculous effect. Not only can't the naked eye see me, but even if a master uses his soul sense, he won't be able to find me." Yen smiled and nodded, "Senior brother Tianqing, you can go now without worry. Remember, the invisibility talisman only lasts for 4 hours. You must leave as soon as possible." Ji Ku also exhorted with concern, "Brother Tianqing, you must be careful." Ji Tianqing said with his soul sense, "You go back to Qingfeng courtyard first and wait for me to come back. After saying that, he quickly crossed the street and followed the honor guard to the forest of divine monuments. Ji Ku and Yan couldn't see Ji Tianqing's figure. But both of them knew that Ji Tianqing must have blended in with the honor guard. They prayed silently in their hearts, then left the street and rushed back to Qinfeng courtyard. About a quarter of an hour later, Prince Kunwa's honor guard majestically entered the forest of divine monuments and arrived at the entrance of the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing had been invisible the whole time. He had been blended in with the honor guard and was not discovered by anyone. At this time, Kunwu took out the prince's token and activated the monarch mansion's enchantment array. The honor guard entered the gate in an endless stream, passed through the colorful barrier, and entered the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing followed at the back of the honor guard and soon entered an alternate space. He saw a vast grassland under his feet, and in front of him were towering and majestic mountain ranges. Every dark green mountain range was like a huge divine dragon lying between heaven and earth, exuding a powerful and majestic aura. At the end of the vast grassland, close to a towering mountain range, there was a huge lake as calm as a mirror. The land was vast, the mountains were beautiful, and the sky was blue. Occasionally, a few white clouds could be seen. There were also a few gigantic flying spirit beasts that were soaring in the sky. This was the mysterious sacred monarch mansion. Before entering the monarch mansion, Ji Tianqing had fantasized many times about what the mysterious and powerful monarch mansion was like. Now, he finally saw that the monarch mansion was not only a mystic realm, but also a vast small world. Kunwa's honor guard stepped on the green and soft grassland and rushed toward the mountain range in front. Although the guards carrying the monarch's chariot were running on the grassland as fast as the wind, their speed was too slow for Ji Tianqing. The effect of the invisibility talisman only lasted for 4 hours. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste time and followed the honor guard into the mountain range. He quickly condensed a pair of wings with his Kenshin battle robe and quietly flew into the sky, rushing into the depths of the mountain range as fast as lightning. After 15 minutes, he entered the undulating mountain range and flew thousands of feet high in the sky. Looking down from the sky, he could see the situation of the mountain range below clearly. He saw that there were dozens of huge mountain ranges in the area with a radius of thousands of miles. The many mountain ranges were connected head to tail. Clearly, they were arranged in a special pattern, containing the mysteries of an incomparably mysterious array formation. With Ji Tianqing's array formation skills, he could not see what kind of array the dozens of huge mountain ranges were arranged in. But he could be sure that this array formed by dozens of mountain ranges in a radius of thousands of miles was definitely an array formation that surpassed the divine origin level. Moreover, the person who could use dozens of mountain ranges to set up an array formation must be a powerhouse above the soul refinement realm. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment and found that each mountain range was a spirit vein that gathered endless heaven and earth spirit qi. Dozens of spirit veins gathered together, causing the heaven and earth spirit qi in a radius of thousands of miles to be so dense that it made one's hair stand on end. The vast and boundless heaven and earth spirit qi condensed into colorful auspicious clouds in the sky, sprinkling colorful water droplets continuously. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was instantly filled with shock and surprise. The heaven and earth spirit qi condensed into clouds, reaching the level of spirit qi liquid. Those colorful raindrops are the legendary spiritual liquid. Chapter 497. Ji Tianqing had read a brief history of martial arts in the Tian-Xian continent and understood many martial arts legends. He knew that spiritual stones and spiritual liquid were rare resources that martial artists needed to cultivate. Spiritual stones were only produced in mines and were extremely rare. Moreover, martial artists needed to meditate and cultivate to absorb the spiritual qi contained in spiritual stones. However, spiritual liquid was different. It was a treasure that was even rarer than spiritual stones. Spiritual liquid was formed by pure spiritual qi and could be consumed directly. If martial artists used spirit liquid to cultivate, not only could they save time in meditation, the effects were even better than spirit stones. However, while spiritual stones and mines were common, spiritual liquid only existed in legends. Ji Tianqing never expected that he would see spiritual qi turn into clouds and liquid in the monarch mansion with his own eyes. This made him exclaim in shock, "The monarch mansion is indeed the #1 martial arts sanctuary on the continent. The spiritual qi here is so dense that it can turn into spiritual liquid. Ordinary flowers and trees would become spiritual herbs and spiritual trees after being nourished by the spiritual liquid. If martial artists were to cultivate here, their strength would increase 10 times faster than the outside world. No wonder everyone believes that only by entering the monarch mansion can one surpass the Sky Yuan stage and reach the legendary refined soul stage." When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing's desire to enter the monarch mansion became even more urgent. He continued to fly above the mountain range and observed from above. After a while, he saw another clue. Every mountain range was a spiritual vein, and the tallest mountain in the mountain range was the spring of the spiritual vein. The spiritual qi contained in the entire spiritual vein would constantly surge out from the spring. Therefore, at the spring of every mountain range, on the peak of the majestic mountain range, there was a huge and magnificent palace. Those magnificent and majestic palaces were all located on the peaks of the mountains that were tens of thousands of meters high. The palaces were shrouded in a hazy 5-colored spiritual qi, and below them was a white sea of clouds. This made each palace seem to be standing in the sea of clouds, emitting a hazy 5-colored spiritual light, as if it was the palace of the gods in the 9 heavens. Ji Tianqing observed for a while and suddenly guessed something. "I understand now. The palaces above the spirit vein spring must be the residences of the princes." Within 1,000 miles, there were more than 50 mountain ranges, which corresponded to more than 50 princes. Every Thearka's son occupies a mountain range, a spirit vein, and a cave abode, which means that they have an extremely abundant amount of cultivation resources. He was extremely envious of those imperial princes. With such abundant and luxurious resources, it would be difficult for them not to become geniuses. However, he believed that it wouldn't be long before he could enter the imperial palace and become a noble imperial prince. He would have his own spiritual vein and cave abode. Very quickly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing crossed a dozen towering mountain ranges and flew to the center of the heaven and earth formation. While he was still far away, he saw a towering mountain in front of him that towered into the sky. The towering mountain that was more than 10,000 meters tall was clearly the center of the area within 1,000 miles. It was also the core of the heaven and earth great formation. Everything above the mountainside was enshrouded in thick white clouds and 5-colored spiritual light. At the peak of the mountain, there was actually a 5-colored spiritual lake with a radius of 5 kilometers. That spiritual lake was the spring of the great formation. The heaven and earth spirit qi within 1,000 miles would constantly emerge from the spring. The extremely dense heaven and earth spirit qi would condense into spiritual liquid. And the endless spiritual liquid would eventually converge into a spiritual lake. After understanding this, Ji Tianqing's heart raced again. Oh my God! A drop of spiritual liquid is already very precious. Its value is comparable to a spirit stone. But the spiritual liquid here can converge into a spiritual lake. How many drops of spiritual liquid would there be? Not to mention using the spiritual liquid to cultivate, even if I bathed in it every day, I wouldn't be able to finish it in my lifetime, right? At that moment, Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with a strong desire and impulse. He really wanted to jump into the spirit lake and drink until he was full of spirit liquid. However, he immediately suppressed this thought. Because he saw that in the sky above the spiritual lake, there were dozens of colorful spiritual jade thrones floating. There was a young expert sitting on each of the spiritual jade thrones. Those young powerhouses were male and female. Their appearances and clans were all different. There were humans, demons, and water clans. Moreover, every one of them was dressed luxuriously. Their auras were noble and graceful. Their entire bodies emitted a strong aura of confidence and pride. Ji Tianqing glanced over and saw almost 50 young powerhouses. Almost all of their strengths had reached the sky origin stage. Even if there were 2 or 3 people who only had the strength of the origin core stage, they had all reached the 7th level of the origin core stage. Moreover, their auras were not inferior to others. He immediately understood the identity of those young powerhouses. They were the princes of the monarch's estate. Almost 50 princes sat on the spiritual jade thrones. They formed a circle around a lotus throne that was dazzling with golden light. On the lotus throne that was surrounded by the princes like stars surrounding the moon, a black-robed man sat cross-legged. The black-robed man was a human powerhouse. His figure was thin and tall, and his face was resolute and dignified. He only wore a black robe. His long hair was draped behind his head. He did not tie his hair into a bun or wear a jade crown. There was not a single ornament on his body. However, even though his attire was simple and unadorned, his entire body emitted a transcendent aura as though he was looking down on heaven and earth. The feeling came from the depths of his soul. Ji Tianqing felt it very strongly and deeply. He could even feel that the black-robed man had surpassed the category of mortals. His life had reached a whole new level. As he thought of this, a thought subconsciously appeared in his mind. Soul Refinement Stage Powerhouse. God-tier Master. That black-robed man must be the legendary God-tier Master of the monarch's estate. A few months ago, Ji Tianqing heard that there was an extraordinary Soul Refinement Stage powerhouse above the Sky Origin stage. Before today, he still thought that Soul Refinement Stage powerhouses were high and mighty. It was almost impossible to see them. However, he did not expect to see a Soul Refinement Stage powerhouse with his own eyes at such a close distance. He quickly stopped 1,000 meters away from the princes and did not dare to get any closer. He was not afraid of being discovered by the Sky Origin princes, but he had to be wary of the Soul Refinement Stage God-tier Master. After all, he was not sure how far the God-tier Master's spiritual consciousness could reach. Moreover, he didn't know how powerful that God-tier Master was. The only thing he could do was to hold his breath and calm his mind. He tried his best to conceal his aura so that the God-tier Master would not notice him. The sky was quiet. The black-robed God-tier Master sat on the golden lotus throne with his eyes closed. The martial monarch's sons in the surroundings sat quietly without saying a word. Even if they did talk, they would secretly use their spiritual consciousness to communicate. Chapter 498. The black-robed Divine Master closed his eyes and rested. Many of the thearchs were also silent. Ji Tianqing hid in the sky not far away. His sharp eyes scanned the thearchs and searched for Yun Yao's figure. 1, 2, 3, 4. He saw one majestic and peerless thearchs after another. He also saw the top prodigies of the various races. They were all so elegant. After a while, when he saw a young human in a golden robe, his eyes paused. He was very familiar with the young man in the golden robe. He had seen him at the entrance of the emperor's residence today. That was the emperor, Long Yunshao. Long Yunshao sat on the spiritual jade throne with a calm expression. He was silent and dignified. However, every once in a while, he would look at the beautiful figure on the left with a gentle look in his eyes. Ji Tianqing followed his gaze and saw a cold and proud figure in a moon-white dress. She was an extremely beautiful woman with an otherworldly temperament that could topple cities. She sat quietly on the spiritual jade throne with her eyes closed. Her expression was cold and indifferent, as if she did not care about everything around her. Ji Tianqing's eyes froze as he stared at her. He muttered in his heart, "Eldest senior sister. I've finally seen you." Without a doubt, that was Yun Yao, whom he had been worried about and swore to protect for the rest of his life. The moment he saw Yun Yao, his eyes became gentle, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Ever since he had recovered from his injuries and left the Cloud Spirit Palace, he had been worried about Yun Yao for the past few months. It was as if a heavy stone was pressing down on his heart. Until now, when he saw that Yun Yao was safe and sound and that her injuries and complexion had recovered to normal, he finally felt relieved. Only then did he finally let go of the huge rock in his heart and secretly let out a sigh of relief. Time passed quietly. Ji Tianqing had been silently staring at Yun Yao. He could not get enough of her. Yun Yao closed her eyes and rested for a long time. However, she suddenly frowned as if she had sensed something. She slowly opened her eyes and quietly turned her head to look in the direction of Ji Tianqing. She and Ji Tianqing were connected by blood, and their minds were interlinked. There was a miraculous telepathy between them. Just now, she vaguely sensed Ji Tianqing's aura, which seemed to be nearby. However, she didn't dare to believe that this was true. She even thought that she was hallucinating. Therefore, there was a hint of doubt and expectation in her eyes. However, when she turned her head to take a look, she saw that the sky was empty. Other than the many princes in the surroundings, there was no one else. The anticipation in Yun Yao's eyes dimmed and was replaced by disappointment. She turned her head back and continued to close her eyes to rest. Ji Tianqing saw everything clearly. He was secretly anxious, but there was nothing he could do. If the black-robed God Master was not present, he really wanted to fly to Yun Yao's side and use his spiritual sense to communicate with her and greet her. Unfortunately, the black-robed God Master was present, so he had no choice but to suppress this thought. At this moment, a handsome young man with silver hair and wearing a white fox fur coat flew over from the sky. He was Prince Kun Wu, the one who helped Ji Tianqing sneak into the monarch mansion. Kun Wu flapped his silver wings and streaked across the sky like a shooting star. He arrived at the scene in a few breaths' time. Prince Kun Wu greets God Master Black Feather. Kun Wu stood in the sky and bowed respectfully to the black-robed God Master on the golden lotus seat. God Master Black Feather opened his eyes. There was a faint flash of lightning in his eyes, which tore the sky in front of him until it was slightly distorted. Kun Wu, have a seat. God Master Black Feather said indifferently. Kun Wu cupped his hands and bowed again. Then, he found a spiritual jade seat and quickly sat down. God Master Black Feather scanned the scene indifferently. When he saw that there were still 5 empty spiritual jade seats, he said calmly, basically, everyone is here. Those who are not here need not wait anymore. The monarch mansion has summoned all of you back to discuss an important matter. A few months ago, the ancient demon emperor, who had been suppressed for thousands of years, broke the seal and reappeared in the world. Princes, please speak freely and discuss how to deal with this matter. God Master Black Feather's expression and tone were cold and indifferent. His words were also very concise. He simply explained what he wanted to discuss. Then, he looked at the crowd in silence and waited for the princes to express their opinions. Ji Tianqing, who was hiding not far away, raised his eyebrows and looked expectant. As I expected, the monarch mansion has summoned all the princes back to Middle State City because of the reappearance of the demon emperor. He stared at the princes in the field, holding his breath as he listened attentively. However, the 50 princes were all silent. They looked indifferent and their eyes were calm. No one spoke first. God Master Black Feather was not in a hurry and did not urge the princes to speak. After 100 breaths, a demon race princess with a slender figure and a foxy temperament spoke in a clear and pleasant voice, "Since none of you are willing to speak first, Fox Princess, will throw a brick to attract jade and give you a start." Hearing this, Crown Prince Kunwu quickly chimed in, "As the third princess, Fox Princess does have the right to speak first." Kunwu is all ears. A few other demon race princes also nodded to express their support. The few princes who spoke in agreement were all from the demon race like Fox Princess. Of course, they were on the same side and were very close to each other. Moreover, Fox Princess was the third princess in the monarch mansion. In terms of strength and status, she was outstanding. Among the demon race princes and princesses, she was the most powerful and the most senior. More than a dozen demon race princes followed her lead. Since Fox Princess had spoken, the demon race princes naturally had to agree and support her. Fox Princess did not continue with the pleasantries. With a serious expression, she said in a low and resolute voice, "The demon race is cruel and bloodthirsty. If there is a chance to exterminate the demon race, we must not miss it. In the ancient era, the demon race once massacred all the races in the world. They caused the sky to fall and the earth to rend, causing many races to perish. A race as cruel and inhumane as the demon race should not exist in this world. For nearly 1,000 years, the demon race was without a leader and the Tian Xian land was able to maintain peace. Now that the demon emperor has reappeared in the world, if he were to lead the demon race, he would certainly set off a new round of bloody storms. Therefore, Fox Princess thinks that the monarch mansion should do everything in their power to kill the demon emperor as soon as possible to prevent him from bringing disaster to the world." After she finished speaking, Fox Princess extended her slender hand and sprinkled the 5-colored vital essence into the spiritual lake on the mountain peak below. Instantly, the 5-colored spiritual lake with a radius of 10 miles turned into a miraculous mirror and displayed a clear picture. It was the picture of a tragic battlefield. Tens of thousands of demon race armies were madly attacking an ancient and majestic city. The city with a radius of a few hundred miles was shrouded by the demon cloud that covered the sky and the sun. It was gloomy and cold. The flames of war were ignited everywhere in the city. Ruins, blood, and corpses were everywhere. The ferocious and bloodthirsty demon race army charged into the city and brutally slaughtered the demon race civilians. After a moment, the ancient city in the picture collapsed and turned into a giant pile of ruins. Chapter 499. After the images in the spiritual lake ended, Fox Concubine waved her hand again and shot out beams of 5-colored light. Then, images appeared in the spiritual lake's mirror one after another. Every image was similar. They were all scenes of the demon race's villages, tribes, and cities being attacked and massacred by the demon race. The scenes in the images were extremely tragic and bloody. It made people feel depressed and angry, and they hated the demon race's cruelty and violence. Fox Concubine showed more than a dozen images before saying solemnly, "The image just now was the scene of the demon race's army massacring the demon race's people 1,000 years ago. Now that the demon race has enjoyed 1,000 years of peace, we can finally recuperate. I, Fox Concubine, will never allow the demon king to return to the northern desert and lead the demon race's army to massacre the demon race's people again." Speaking of this, Fox Concubine looked at God Teacher Black Feather solemnly and said, "God Teacher Black Feather, Fox Concubine pleads for the imperial residents to find the ancient demon king's tracks as soon as possible. Please kill it before it escapes back to the northern desert to prevent future troubles." God Teacher Black Feather said indifferently, "The imperial residence is in Zhongzhou City and controls the land of Zhongzhou. They are only responsible for protecting the land of Zhongzhou. If the ancient demon king escapes to Zhongzhou and wreaks havoc, the imperial residence will naturally send experts to kill it. As for the eastern wilderness, western wilderness, northern desert, and the 9 regions in the south, they are ruled by the various imperial courts. The imperial residence will not interfere." God Teacher Black Feather's attitude was very clear. The imperial residents ruled the land of Zhongzhou and would only protect it. They would not care about the lives of the various races. After all, that was the imperial court's business. Fox Concubine frowned and asked again, "God Teacher Black Feather, if the imperial residence is neutral and will not interfere, why did you gather all the princes to discuss this matter?" God Teacher Black Feather looked at her indifferently and explained, "What I said just now is the Imperial Residence's position. The reason why I gathered all of you for a discussion is to hear your opinions. The Imperial Residence will make a decision based on everyone's opinions. Thank you for clearing my doubts." Fox Concubine bowed and did not say anything else. At this moment, Long Yun Shao spoke in a calm tone. 1,000 years ago, the Devil Emperor unleashed a massacre in our territory, causing rivers of blood to flow in several regions and plunging the people into misery and suffering. Now that the Fiend Emperor has broken the seal, he will definitely wreak havoc in our territory. I suggest that the Imperial Monarch Residence send experts to kill the Devil King as soon as possible. Furthermore, our Imperial Court will also assist the Monarch Manor with all our might. We vow to fight the demon race to the end. As the Emperor of the Imperial Court, Long Yun Zhao's words represented the attitude of the Imperial Court. The princes and princesses of the human race nodded slightly in agreement. Seeing this, Fox Princess glanced at Long Yun Shao, and a playful smile appeared on her lips. Son of Heaven is wise indeed. Our race is the same as the human race. We have an irreconcilable blood feud with the demon race. If we allow the Devil Emperor to recover, he will definitely lead the Devil Army to attack our West Baron monster race. Although you humans are located in the southern continent and are separated from the northern desert by the central continent, you seem to be the furthest away from the demon race. However, once the demons of the western wilderness are defeated, the demon emperor's next target will be the humans of the southern land. The relationship between our two races is as close as the lips and teeth. Without the lips, the teeth will feel cold. Long Yun Shao looked at Fox Princess, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded. He entered the Imperial Residence late and was only ranked 53rd. However, Fox Princess had been in the Imperial Residence for many years and was ranked 3rd. Her strength was several levels higher than his. Before today, Fox Princess had never spoken a word to him, nor did she take him seriously. Of course, he knew that Fox Princess was talking to him in public just to pull him to the same side. At the same time, a princess of the water race sitting opposite Fox Princess spoke indifferently. The territory of the demon race is close to the demon race of the northern desert. Since ancient times, the demon race has harmed us. 1,000 years ago, the Silver Moon Fox race was at its peak, but the demon army slaughtered 60 to 70% of its people. Fox Princess's indignation was understandable. However, the water race of the eastern wilderness doesn't have much of a grudge against the demon race. If you attack the Devil Emperor, I will give you my blessings. I hope you will win, haha. This prince was as strong as an iron tower. He wore a loose purple robe and exuded a domineering aura. His face was resolute and fierce, and his temperament was valiant. A golden dragon horn protruded from his forehead, and his exposed skin was covered in fine dragon scales. This was the most respected prince of the golden dragon race in the eastern wilderness. He was also the prince of the demon imperial court, Tai. More importantly, he was ranked first among the more than 50 princes of the imperial residence. He had already reached the half-step spirit refining realm and was recognized as the strongest among the princes. He was also the leader of the princes of the water race. When Tai finished speaking, several other princes of the water race chimed in. The imperial residence is the ruler of the middle ground. They have a high status. Why would they interfere with the grudge between the humans, demons, and demons? We haven't even found the Devil Emperor, and the humans and demons are already fighting. That's too reckless. It's just the demons. What's there to fear? The water race of the eastern wilderness isn't afraid of the demons. Fox Princess frowned at the words of the princes of the water race. She looked at Tai coldly and said in a low voice, Tai, the eastern wilderness is the same as the western wilderness. They're both close to the northern desert. Why are you gloating like this? Aren't you afraid that the Devil Emperor will lead his army to invade the East Wasteland and slaughter your water-kind people? Let's see how you're going to defend yourself by then. How are you going to explain it to your people? Tai was still calm. He dusted his wide sleeves and said slowly, for thousands of years, the water race of the eastern wilderness has developed under the rule of the Golden Dragon race. They're powerful and prosperous. If the ancient demon emperor dares to lead his army to invade, I'll make sure he doesn't return. Moreover, the demon army isn't good at swimming. Even if they enter the eastern wilderness, they won't be able to move. What do I have to fear? Tai then glanced at Fox Princess with a mocking smile. Fox Princess's beautiful face became colder and colder. After a cold snort, she ignored him. Following it, the martial monarchs of the human tribe and the beast tribe spoke too. Everyone supported the imperial residents to kill the devil emperor. Yunyao listened in silence. She looked indifferent and didn't say anything. Ji Tianqing hid in the dark and observed for a long time. He understood the attitudes of the various races and saw the differences between the princes of the three races. The princes of the Eastern Wilderness Water race obviously followed Tai's lead. After all, he was the most powerful and the oldest among the 50 princes. He was also the heir of the Water race imperial court. The princes of the Western Wilderness Demon race followed Fox Princess. The human princes and princesses all followed Long Yunxiao's opinion on the matter of dealing with the Devil Emperor. Although Long Yunxiao was weaker, he was the emperor of the human race and represented the human imperial court. An hour later, the disciples finished their discussion and looked at Divine Master Heiyu, waiting for him to make a decision. Chapter 500. Ji Tianqing calculated the time. He had at most 15 minutes before the invisibility talisman's effect wore off. Within this 15 minutes, he had to leave the princes and Divine Master Heiyu as soon as possible to avoid exposing himself. However, since he wanted to know the imperial residence's stance and also wanted to talk to Yunyao, he was unwilling to leave just like that. He stared at Divine Master Heiyu on the golden lotus seat and suppressed his anxiety as he waited silently. However, Divine Master Heiyu did not immediately express his stance. He spoke a few more sentences, indicating that the imperial residents had not started investigating the demonic emperor's whereabouts. If the imperial residents wanted to deal with the demonic emperor, they would have to give out missions and delay the prince's cultivation. There would also be many unexpected dangers. It was even possible that some princes would be sacrificed because of this. Divine Master Heiyu stated the stakes and asked the princes to consider carefully before making the final decision. The princes fell into silence again, and they were carefully weighing the pros and cons. In the blink of an eye, a quarter of an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing knew that the imperial residence was a martial arts holy land and would be very careful when making an important decision. It was normal for Divine Master Heiyu and the princes to discuss for an entire day, let alone 2 hours. However, Ji Tianqing did not have enough time. Divine Master Heiyu still had not expressed the imperial residence's final decision, but he could not wait any longer. Damn it! If I had another hour, I would have known the imperial residence's decision and strategy. No, I can't wait any longer. I have to leave this place in the last 15 minutes and find a safe place to hide. Then, I will think of a way to contact senior sister. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and prepared to turn around and leave. He was wary of Divine Master Heiyu and did not dare to use too much true core power. He gently flapped his golden wings and flew into the distance. However, the flapping of his golden wings still accelerated the flow of the air, creating invisible air currents and cyclones. No matter how careful he was, this was unavoidable. Divine Master Heiyu, who was sitting on the lotus seat, was pondering expressionlessly. His invisible spiritual sense covered a radius of 5 kilometers. He immediately sensed that in the sky 1,000 meters away, there was an abnormal fluctuation in the air, and a trace of true yuan leaked out. At that moment, Divine Sage Heiyu suddenly raised his eyelids and looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes as sharp as swords. Ji Tianqing felt as if there was a thorn in his back when he was being stared at by his sharp eyes. His body suddenly stiffened, and he stopped, not daring to move. It's over. Have we been discovered by divine sovereign Black Feather? However, even though he was invisible, he could not escape from divine master Black Feather's senses and was discovered. Who dares to trespass into the imperial residence? God Mentor He Yu roared angrily. He suddenly raised his right hand and waved his palm to unleash a huge five-colored palm shadow. Shwa! That huge, dazzling palm shadow contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. It streaked across the sky at the speed of light and instantly arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. The five-colored palm was too fast. It was so fast that it exceeded Ji Tianqing's imagination. He had no chance to dodge it. At this critical moment, he did not have time to think. He instinctively opened his wide golden wings and blocked in front of him to protect his body. At the same time, the five-colored giant palm with terrifying power slammed into Ji Tianqing, drowning his body. Bang! A loud, dull sound exploded and echoed in the sky. The violent and devastating force exploded, shattering the sky within 1,000 meters, revealing black cracks. A palm strike from a soul-refining realm expert was so powerful that it could tear the sky apart. Divine Master He Yu's strength was so terrifying. Ji Tianqing was sent flying by the five-colored palm. He only stopped after he was sent flying 1,000 meters away. Fortunately, he used his golden wings to protect himself and blocked the destructive palm strike. He was not killed on the spot. Unfortunately, he suffered severe internal injuries. His internal organs were all twisted and ruptured. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, the effect of the invisibility talisman was broken by Divine Master He Yu's palm strike. Ji Tianqing's figure was revealed. His face was pale and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked quite miserable as he stood in the sky. Since his whereabouts had been exposed, he decided not to hide anymore. He stood in the sky openly and looked directly at Divine Master He Yu. Divine Master He Yu sized him up and raised his thick, black brows. A look of surprise flashed across his cold and indifferent eyes. A human kid at the Origin Core realm was actually able to withstand a palm strike from this lord and not die. This child is a promising talent. At the same time, the 50 martial emperor's princes turned their heads and looked at Ji Tianqing. Many of the princes looked surprised as they sized him up with complicated expressions. A few of the princes even started to discuss among themselves. It's a human kid. His face is quite unfamiliar. He doesn't know what's good for him. How dare he sneak into the monarch mansion? Even God can't save him. The sacred dignity of the monarch mansion is not to be blasphemed. This kid deserves to die for sneaking in. Interesting. An Origin Core realm human warrior dares to sneak into the monarch mansion. This is really strange. Among the 50 princes, 2 of them had a drastic change in expression. They were not like the other princes who were watching coldly from the sidelines and gloating. These 2 people were Long Yunxiao and Yunyao. When Long Yunxiao saw Ji Tianqing, he immediately frowned and looked surprised. He had never thought that Ji Tianqing would be so bold as to sneak into the monarch mansion. When Yunyao saw Ji Tianqing's appearance, her eyes lit up and her heart was filled with excitement and joy. She could not believe that her telepathy earlier was real. Ji Tianqing had really entered the monarch mansion and come to her side. However, the light in her eyes immediately dimmed, and a strong sense of anxiety and worry gushed out. She knew very well that Ji Tianqing would most likely be executed by Divine Master He Yu in front of everyone. As expected, Divine Master He Yu looked at Ji Tianqing with a sharp gaze and shouted indifferently, "Kid, you are the first person who dares to sneak into the monarch mansion in the past 100 years. I will give you 3 chances to say your last words. After you say your last words, come and accept your death." The monarch mansion was a sacred place for martial arts and was the top mysterious force in the Tianxian continent. How could it allow anyone to sneak in? Divine Master He Yu did not kill Ji Tianqing immediately and even gave him the chance to say his last words. This was already a great kindness. Many princes also looked at Ji Tianqing indifferently and did not feel that there was anything wrong. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any time and quickly flew towards Yunyao. After a moment, he arrived before Yunyao and looked at Yunyao gently. He squeezed out a smile on his pale face. Chapter 501. Yunyao also looked at Ji Tianqing with a worried expression. She would rather not see Ji Tianqing than see him in a desperate situation. But now that Divine Master Black Feather had discovered him and spoke in front of everyone, the outcome seemed to be decided. Yunyao was extremely worried, but there was nothing she could do. She could only sigh. Tianqing, you shouldn't have come here. Ji Tianqing looked at her clear eyes and said calmly, but I'm already here. I can only be at ease when I see that you're safe. How could Yunyao not understand his feelings? But now, it was too late to say anything. The only thing she could do was to plead with Divine Master Black Feather. At this moment, Ji Tianqing turned to look at Divine Master Black Feather. He cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. Divine Master Black Feather, I'm Ji Tianqing. I sneaked into the Monarch Mansion just to see my senior sister. I didn't mean to offend the Monarch Mansion's dignity. Please understand. Yunyao also hurriedly bowed to Divine Master Black Feather and said sincerely, Divine Master Black Feather, Tianqing is my junior brother. We were separated for a few months, and he was worried about me, so he rashly barged into the Monarch Mansion. Please forgive him, Divine Master. Divine Master Black Feather looked at Yunyao and Ji Tianqing indifferently and said coldly, the Monarch Mansion's dignity cannot be offended. No matter what difficulties he has, he must die. This is the Monarch Mansion's rule, and it cannot be changed. Yunyao pleaded again. She quickly said, Divine Master He Yu, please be lenient and spare Tianqing this time. A few months ago, when the ancient demon emperor broke through the sky pillar sect seal array, I personally experienced that calamity. As for my junior brother Tianqing, he fearlessly faced the ancient fiend emperor head-on and even injured him and forced him to retreat. He was the one who had saved the sky pillar sect and the star ancient realm. He had saved the billions of citizens of the heavenly stellar region. He was the great hero of the heavenly stellar region. If the imperial residence wants to deal with the ancient demonic emperor, they can't kill Tianqing. He knows the ancient demonic emperor's strength better than we do. Upon hearing Yunyao's words, everyone present was stunned. They all had expressions of disbelief and disbelief. Many princes stared at Ji Tianqing, their sharp eyes observing him as if they wanted to see through him. One of the demon race's princes said, Yunyao, aren't you exaggerating? If this person can defeat the ancient demon emperor, doesn't that mean that every one of us here can kill the ancient demon emperor? This person's words caused many princes to nod in agreement. Another young master from the water tribe chimed in, he's only at the origin core realm, not even at the heavenly origin realm. The ancient demonic emperor was an unparalleled demon from 1,000 years ago. Even if he was sealed for 1,000 years and his strength was greatly reduced, he's still not someone an origin core realm martial artist can deal with. Golden Dragon Tai Yi sat on the spiritual jade throne and calmly glanced at Yunyao. He said indifferently, that kid is Yunyao's junior brother. The two of them have a close relationship. It's understandable that Yunyao is pleading for him. However, Yunyao, you actually made up such a ridiculous lie just to plead for him. That's not befitting of a princess. Tai Yi's words naturally garnered the approval and support of many princes from the water tribe. Everyone was certain that Yunyao was lying. With Ji Tianqing's strength, it was impossible for him to defeat the ancient demonic emperor. That was simply unheard of. However, Divine Master He Yu did not speak. He frowned slightly and looked at Ji Tianqing calmly. He seemed to be in deep thought. The princes did not know about the ancient demonic emperor, but he had already known about it. That was why he had gathered the princes for a discussion. A few months ago, the ancient demonic emperor broke through the Sky Pillar Sect seal array and started a massacre in the Star Ancient Realm. Someone stepped forward and severely injured the ancient demonic emperor, forcing him to flee. That was how the small Sky Pillar Sect survived and was not destroyed by the ancient demonic emperor. Yun Yao and this kid are both disciples of the Sky Pillar Sect and should have personally experienced that disaster. If what Yun Yao said is true, and the person who defeated the ancient demonic emperor is really Ji Tianqing, then this kid's talent and strength are truly unimaginable. He might even surpass the princes present. When he thought of this, Divine Master He Yu's gaze towards Ji Tianqing became much gentler. As the sacred land of martial arts in the Tian Xian continent, the imperial residence stood proudly above the mortal world and usually did not care about the mundane matters of the martial arts world. Only the top martial arts prodigies would receive the imperial residence's attention and nurture. Ji Tianqing's shocking talent and strength far surpassed many of the princes present. He was the top prodigy that the imperial residence craved the most. At this moment, Long Yunxiao also stood up. He bowed to Divine Master He Yu and said with cupped hands, "Divine Master He Yu, I can also testify that Ji Tianqing defeated the ancient demonic emperor. Also, Ji Tianqing did not trespass when he sneaked into the imperial residence. He has already decided to enter the imperial residence and made an agreement with me. He will challenge me in front of everyone at the Apocalypse Tower next month. He already meets the basic requirements of the imperial residence. If he can defeat me, he can pass the imperial residence's test and become the new prince." After hearing Long Yunxiao's explanation, many princes raised their eyebrows and looked at him and Ji Tianqing with playful eyes. Divine Master He Yu also raised his eyebrows and looked at Long Yunxiao calmly. "Oh. There is such a thing." "Absolutely." Long Yunxiao cupped his hands and said with a serious expression, "Divine Master He Yu, please be merciful and forgive him this time." Divine Master He Yu frowned and thought for a moment. He then looked at Ji Tianqing and said in a dignified tone, "Ji Tianqing, you can sneak into the imperial residence. With such talent and strength, you are also a good seedling. Our imperial residence is based in the Tianxian continent. As the top martial Dao sanctuary, we are naturally thirsty for talents. Since the two imperial princes are pleading on your behalf, I'll give you a chance today. I will give you a month's time. If you can really defeat Prince Long Yunxiao, you can pass the imperial residence's test and become the 56th prince. In this way, you will not be considered trespassing into the imperial residence, and I will not pursue your crime. However, if you lose to Prince Long Yunxiao, you cannot become the prince of our imperial residence. I will punish you according to the rules of the imperial residence." After hearing Divine Master He Yu's words, Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were relieved. Since Divine Master He Yu was willing to give him a month's time, at least there was room for negotiation. Long Yunxiao also looked confident and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Divine Master He Yu. I will do my best and will not give him a chance to win. If he loses to me, there is no need for Divine Master He Yu to punish him. I will take care of him." After hearing this, Yun Yao looked at Long Yunxiao coldly and glared at him. Chapter 502. Since Divine Master He Yu had spoken, this matter was settled. All the princes looked on coldly and did not discuss this matter anymore. Ji Tianqing bowed to Divine Master He Yu and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Divine Master He Yu. I will definitely defeat Long Yunxiao and enter the monarch mansion as soon as possible to become the new prince." Divine Master He Yu nodded slightly and said indifferently, "You still have to wait for a month to become the new prince. Now, you are not the prince of this mansion, so you are not qualified to stay in the monarch mansion. I still have to discuss important matters with the princes." You should leave quickly. After saying that, Divine Master Heyu waved his wide sleeves and signaled Ji Tianqing to leave. Yunyao quickly cupped her hands and said, Divine Master Heyu, I will send him out of the monarch mansion. Divine Master Heyu nodded and agreed to her request. Therefore, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao turned and left, flying towards the exit of the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing endured his internal injuries and flapped his golden wings to fly in the sky. Yunyao also flapped her fiery wings and followed beside him, flying side by side with him. On the way, Yunyao looked at him with concern and said, Tianqing, don't do something as dangerous as trespassing on the monarch mansion again. Ji Tianqing nodded and said gently, Senior sister, I have not seen you since you sacrificed yourself to save me. I know you are seriously injured and almost lost your life. I am worried about you and just want to see you. Yunyao stared at him with a complicated look in her eyes. She sighed and said, Tianqing, you're risking your life just to see me. Is it worth it? Yes. Ji Tianqing answered without hesitation. Yunyao was silent, but a touch of gentleness flashed across her clear eyes. In front of others, she was cold and aloof, and her temperament was as cold as ice. Only in front of Ji Tianqing would her frosty aura melt and turn into soft water. Ji Tianqing said seriously, in a month's time, the emperor will choose his heavenly concubine at the Apocalypse Pagoda. Eldest senior sister, don't worry. When that day comes, I will climb up the Apocalypse Tower and defeat Long Yunxiao in front of everyone. After I defeat him, not only will he not make things difficult for you, I can also enter the monarch mansion. Madame Yun also promised me that as long as I can enter the monarch manor, she will not stop us from meeting. Eldest senior sister, after I enter the monarch mansion, I will be able to see you every day. Ji Tianqing's tone was very solemn, and his eyes were full of confidence and expectation. Yunyao nodded and warned, Tianqing, I believe everything you said. I believe that you will definitely defeat Long Yunxiao. However, Long Yunxiao was at the second level of the Sky Origin stage after all. He had mastered many secret skills from the royal court. His true power was not to be underestimated. You must be careful and not be careless. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, I understand, eldest senior sister. Not long after, the two of them flew above a vast grassland and arrived at the exit of the monarch mansion. On the vast grassland, there was a huge altar that was 30 meters tall. The altar was 100 meters wide, and there was a huge circular array board at the top. It was engraved with mysterious array patterns. The formation plate lit up with colorful brilliance, condensing into a colorful light gate that was 100 meters tall. It was a teleportation array and also the entrance to the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao landed on the array board. Yunyao took out the monarch's token and activated the teleportation array with a secret skill. Swoosh! The barrier in the colorful light gate disappeared and turned into a whirlpool. Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing and said, Tianqing, take care. Eldest senior sister, don't worry about me. We will meet again soon. Ji Tianqing waved at Yunyao and stepped into the teleportation array. The next moment, his figure was swallowed by the whirlpool and he left the monarch mansion. Swoosh! With a flash of colorful light, he appeared in the forest of divine steels, under the towering gate that was 100 meters tall. He looked back at the gate of the monarch mansion and then left, rushing back to the breeze courtyard in the fish dragon alley. 1 hour later, Ji Tianqing returned to the breeze courtyard. Ji Ku and Yen had already returned to the breeze courtyard. They had been sitting in the pavilion of the first courtyard, waiting for his return with worry. When Ji Tianqing crossed the gate and entered the courtyard, the two people who were waiting for him immediately saw him and hurriedly went up to greet him. Brother Tianqing, you are finally back. Senior brother Tianqing, you are finally back. I'm glad you are okay. Ji Ku and Yen came closer and saw that Ji Tianqing had suffered internal injuries. His face was a little pale, and there were still traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Immediately, the two of them showed concern and quickly asked. Brother Tianqing, how did you get hurt? What happened? Did the powerhouses of the monarch mansion find you? Senior brother Tianqing, are your injuries serious? Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that they did not need to worry. My injuries are not serious. I will recover in a few days. This is not the place to talk. Let's go back first. Ji Ku and Yen were relieved and quickly followed him back to the living room of the third courtyard. After sitting down, Ji Tianqing saw that there was no one around to disturb them. Then, he explained the situation to them. With the help of Yen's invisibility charm, I successfully sneaked into the monarch mansion. I happened to meet a divine master and many princes who were discussing how to deal with the demonic emperor. Furthermore, I even saw eldest senior sister. She personally sent me off. Ji Ku and Yen were excited and looked expectant. They quickly asked, Brother Tianqing, you met the legendary divine master and many princes? The monarch mansion summoned many princes back to Middle State City because of the demonic emperor. Senior brother Tianqing, what is the monarch mansion's stance? Will they deal with the demonic emperor? Ji Tianqing frowned and said regretfully, the monarch mansion took a neutral stance in dealing with the demonic emperor. They did not express their stance but listened to the opinions of the princes first. Among the princes of the three clans, only the human clan and the demon clan supported dealing with the demonic emperor. The water clan was indifferent and looked on coldly. Before I heard the monarch mansion's stance, the invisibility charm was about to expire. Then, I was discovered by the Divine Master Heiyu. Speaking of which, the Divine Master Heiyu of the soul cultivation stage is really powerful. A casual palm strike from him could shatter the sky and almost take my life. Recalling Divine Master Black Feather's seemingly ordinary but terrifyingly powerful palm strike, Ji Tianqing still felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, the wings of Kenshin's battle robe helped him block the power of the palm strike. Otherwise, he would not have come back alive. Ji Ku and Yen were originally full of expectations, hoping that the monarch mansion would come out to deal with the demonic emperor. In that case, the demonic emperor would be eradicated quickly, and the Sky Pillar sect and the ancient star realm would be completely stable. Chapter 503. Ji Ku and Yen then asked Ji Tianqing about Yunyao. The three of them chatted for a while before Ji Ku and Yen took their leave and returned to their residence. Ji Tianqing also prepared to return to his residence to recuperate in seclusion for a few days. However, as soon as he walked out of the living room, he saw the Beast King walking towards him. When the Beast King saw him, he quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, Nephew Tianqing, this old man has something to talk to you about. Ji Tianqing stopped, cupped his hands to the Beast King, and asked, what is the matter, Senior Beast King? The Beast King did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point, Nephew will be preparing to enter the monarch mansion in the near future, so you will definitely concentrate on improving your strength and will have no time to take care of Qianyu. It just so happens that this old man has been idle recently and has become more proficient in raising spirit beasts. If Nephew doesn't mind, you might as well give Qianyu and the flood dragon to this old man. This old man will personally train and teach them, and they will definitely grow faster. Once they become stronger, they will be of great help to you, Nephew. Ji Tianqing naturally would not refuse the Beast King's kindness. He quickly cupped his hands and thanked him, thank you for your kindness, Senior Beast King. I will leave Qianyu and the little black dragon in your care. After saying that, he took off the 100 treasures brocade pouch from his waist and handed it to the Beast King. Qianyu and the little black dragon were sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, quietly cultivating. Unfortunately, they did not have sufficient cultivation resources, nor could they get the guidance of a master, so their speed of improving their strength was very fast. This was a common characteristic of all spirit beasts, their growth speed was very slow. They often needed to spend hundreds of years to become Yuan Dan stage great monsters or heavenly origin stage monster kings. After the Beast King received the 100 treasures brocade pouch, he told Ji Tianqing, "Nephew, you can cultivate at ease. This old man will not disturb you. If you need anything, just tell White Ape to do it. He will definitely do it well. If nephew is worried about Qian Yu and the little black dragon, you can also visit them often to check on their progress." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "Then I'll have to trouble Senior. Junior will be eternally grateful." The two exchanged some pleasantries before the Beast King left with the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Ji Tianqing also returned to his residence and went into seclusion to recuperate. The Beast King had prepared a separate courtyard for him, Ji Ku, and Yen, It was called Jade Pure Court. This clear jade garden was the most elegant and unique courtyard in the Clear Breeze courtyard, with the most abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing's room was not only elegant and comfortable, it was also equipped with a secret training room and a pill room. Both the secret room and the pill room were equipped with heaven origin grade formations, which could provide an endless supply of heaven and earth spiritual qi. Cultivating in the clear jade garden was faster than cultivating in the sky pillar sect. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the secret chamber, absorbing the spiritual energy in the spirit gathering array. Strands of 5-colored spiritual energy flowed into his body like a small stream flowing into a large river. Relying on the powerful self-healing ability of the Kenshin bloodline, he quickly healed his internal injuries and replenished the true essence he had consumed. Time passed quietly, and in the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing's injuries had healed, so he ended his seclusion and left the secret chamber. He returned to his room and brewed a pot of spiritual tea, preparing to taste the spiritual tea personally cultivated by the Beast King. At this time, the sound of muffled footsteps came from outside the courtyard. He probed with his spiritual sense and saw White Ape quickly walking into the courtyard, holding a silver-edged invitation in his hand. A moment later, White Ape came to his room and knocked on the door. Ji Tianqing got up and opened the door, asking, "White Ape, why are you looking for me?" White Ape handed the invitation to him and said solemnly, "Tianqing, a messenger came to see you just now. He brought this invitation and said that he wanted to give it to Miss Ji Ku." "An invitation?" Ji Tianqing took the luxurious and dazzling invitation and carefully observed it. The invitation was made of golden paper and wrapped with silver thread at the edges. It was also inlaid with a few gems that flickered with light. Mysterious array patterns were engraved on the invitation, which contained a powerful array power. It looked extremely exquisite and noble. Just this invitation alone was worth at least 10 spirit stones. Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion and asked, "Someone who can afford this kind of invitation must have an extraordinary background." "White Ape, did you ask who the messenger was delivering the letter for?" White Ape answered truthfully, "I've already asked. The messenger said that he was a guard under Imperial Prince Kunwu." "Imperial Prince Kunwu?" Ji Tianqing frowned, his eyes full of doubts and puzzlement. Why would Kunwu send someone to deliver an invitation to Kuku? The two of them have nothing to do with each other. White Ape naturally couldn't answer this question. He cupped his hands at Ji Tianqing and after bidding farewell, he turned around and left. Ji Tianqing held the golden jade invitation and frowned for a moment before he went to the next room to find Ji Ku. Ji Ku was cultivating when she heard the knock on the door. She quickly stopped and opened the door to welcome Ji Tianqing in. "Brother Tianqing, why are you looking for me?" Ji Tianqing handed the invitation to her and explained, "Imperial Prince Kunwu's guard just sent this invitation to you." "Imperial Prince Kunwu? Was it that so-called demon prince? He sent me an invitation." Ji Ku was stunned and thought that she had misheard. After she came back to her senses, she frowned in confusion. "I don't know this guy. Why would he send me an invitation? We only saw his guard of honor on the street that day. Before that, I've never heard of this person." Ji Tianqing nodded. This is indeed unbelievable. Open the invitation and take a look first. Ji Ku did as she was told. She opened the invitation and read it carefully. After reading the contents of the invitation, her expression became more and more astonished. She said suspiciously, "Brother Tianqing, that Imperial Prince Kunwu actually invited me to Xingyu Villa as a guest." Ji Tianqing frowned. "Invited you to Xingyu Villa as a guest? What is this Imperial Prince Kunwu trying to do?" Ji Ku was also confused and couldn't make sense of it. She frowned and thought for a moment. Then she pursed her lips and said, "Brother Tianqing, we don't know that Kunwu at all. Regardless of whether he sent the wrong invitation or if he has some scheme or intention, we don't need to pay attention to him." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said in a solemn tone, "Since Kunwu's guard was able to find Qingfeng courtyard, he must have followed you or secretly investigated you. Since he specifically asked for the invitation to be given to you, there must be a reason behind it. No matter what, let's go to Xingyu Villa and see what he's trying to do." Ji Ku didn't want to go. Whether Kunwu was a demon prince or the imperial prince of the monarch residence, it had nothing to do with her. Chapter 504. Ji Tianqing found White Ape and asked him about the location of Star Moon Manor. White Ape thought for a moment and told him that Star Moon Manor was outside Zhongzhou City, on Star Moon Mountain in the western suburbs. It was said that Star Moon Manor was a magnificent, palace-like manor. It was the temporary residence of a distinguished person. The moment Ji Tianqing heard this, he understood that the so-called honorable person was most likely referring to Emperor Kunwu. After he and Ji Ku were ready, they left Qingfeng courtyard and rushed to the western city gate. It was the time when the sun rose, so there were few people on the streets. Ji Tianqing held Ji Ku's hand and flapped his golden wings, flying in the air as fast as light. About an hour later, they passed through the western city gate and left Zhongzhou City. The western suburbs outside the city were covered with rolling mountain ranges, lush forests, and lofty mountains. 200 miles away from the western city gate, there was a crescent-shaped mountain range called Star Moon Mountain. Ji Tianqing took only an hour to arrive at Star Moon Mountain with Ji Ku. The two of them looked down at the peak of Star Moon Mountain from the sky. Soon, they found the magnificent Star Moon Manor hidden in the forest. Star Moon Manor was built on the peak of a mountain that was thousands of feet high and covered an area of 10 miles. The entire manor was very spacious and imposing. There were many majestic and dignified palaces and rows of exquisite and elegant houses within the manor. There were also several gardens, 2 clear lakes, and beautiful pavilions and other buildings in the manor. Ji Tianqing could see that the architectural style of Star Moon Manor was different from that of the human tribe's palaces. It had a strong foreign style. Moreover, the entire manor was protected by the Tianyuan Formation and there were countless guards and maids in the manor. Star Moon Manor was not only luxurious but also heavily guarded. After seeing the layout of Star Moon Manor, Ji Tianqing descended from the sky with Ji Ku and landed outside the main gate of Star Moon Manor. The gate of the manor, which was nearly 100 meters tall, was like the gate of a majestic city. It was guarded by dozens of muscular demon guards. Ji Tianqing led Ji Ku to the entrance calmly. A guard captain hurriedly walked out and stopped the two of them in a dignified manner. Ji Tianqing didn't say much and took out the golden invitation card. After the guard captain saw the invitation, he immediately bowed respectfully to the two of them. "So it's your highness esteemed guest. Please forgive me if I was rude just now. Please follow me. His highness has been waiting in the heart-nourishing lake for a long time." After saying that, the guard captain personally led the way for the two of them and brought them into the Star Moon Villa. Under the lead of the guard captain, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku passed through 2 layers of palaces and courtyards. They crossed several paths and corridors before entering an elegant garden. In the huge garden, there was a mirror-like lake. All kinds of spirit willows and flowers were planted around the lake. In the middle of the sparkling lake, there was an octagonal pavilion with cornices that was about 10 feet tall. Its design was extremely exquisite and unique. There were no pillars at the bottom of the pavilion, but it floated above the lake and was as stable as a huge mountain. The pavilion was surrounded by clear lake water. There was no covered bridge connecting the shore. No matter who wanted to enter the pavilion, they had to fly in the air or use qinggong to step across the lake. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku came to the shore of the lake and saw a stone table and a few stone stools in the exquisite and elegant pavilion. A tall and handsome demon youth wearing a white fox fur coat was sitting in front of the stone table. His right arm was placed on the stone table and his palm was supporting his handsome and resolute face. His left hand was holding a cup of spirit tea and he was quietly sipping it. This person exuded an unruly, noble, and powerful aura. He was obviously Prince Kunwu. In addition, there were two charming demon maids in the pavilion. One of them was in charge of pouring tea, while the other was sitting at the edge of the pavilion, waving her slender hands and playing a guqin. The melodious sound of the guqin kept coming from the pavilion, making people feel refreshed and relaxed. The captain of the guards bowed to Prince Kunwu in the pavilion and reported loudly, "Your Highness, the honored guests are here." Prince Kunwu came back to his senses and turned to look at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku by the shore of the lake. "Let them in." After saying this, he waved his hand and shot out a light blue true essence light beam, pouring it into the sparkling lake. Dense mist immediately rose from the surface of the lake and condensed into ice in the blink of an eye, forming a 10-meter-long covered bridge. The crystal-clear ice-covered bridge spanned across the 10-meter-wide lake. One end was connected to the pavilion, and the other end extended to Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku's feet. Such a mysterious and extraordinary technique with spiritual qi was not something an ordinary Heaven's Prime cultivator could perform. At least, an ordinary Heaven's Prime cultivator could not do it as easily as Prince Kunwu, who could form a huge ice bridge with a flick of his finger. However, Ji Tianqing did not step onto the ice bridge. He flapped his golden wings and flew across the lake with Ji Ku, as fast as a beam of light, and landed in the pavilion. Seeing this, Prince Kunwu could not help but raise his eyebrows. Of course, he knew that the other party did not seem to appreciate his kindness and did not have a good impression of him. However, he did not take it to heart. "Please have a seat." Kunwu sat on the stone bench and did not get up. His left hand was still holding the teacup as he greeted them calmly. As he spoke, he sized up Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku calmly. When he saw Ji Tianqing's face clearly, he frowned and said in surprise, "You are that Ji Tianqing who trespassed into the emperor's residence?" I didn't expect us to meet again." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said, "I am Ku's elder brother. You invited her to Star Moon Village, so I naturally have to accompany her." "Oh." Kunwu raised his eyebrows and smiled playfully. "Fate is so clever. I didn't expect you to have such a relationship." Then, he ordered the demon clan maid behind him, pour tea for the two guests. The demon clan maid was very clever and immediately served Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku 2 cups of spiritual tea. Ji Ku did not appreciate it and said to Kunwu expressionlessly, "There is no need for tea. I have never met you before. Why did you invite me to Star Moon Village? What is it? What is it? Just say it." Kunwu looked at her deeply and said with a smile, "Ji Ku, although we do not know each other, there is no enmity between us. I have no ill intentions. This monarch invited you to Star Moon Manor to taste the tea, look at the scenery, and chat a little. That's all." Ji Ku frowned and wanted to say something. However, Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile and nodded, "All right, since Prince Kunwu wants to drink tea and chat, we will naturally keep you company. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.